is the outline that we're going to follow today. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. So we're trying to go through a lot, see how far we get.
Do an introduction, overview, some of the stuff we can skip past that you guys will know, like universes we talked about yesterday. Usually in a one-day class, we only get to about here, the first page, and we're going to try to get through as much of this other stuff as we can as well. So, is that screen? Most of the time, we're just going to spend actually in the tool, just a brief overview. I think you guys know what WEBI is. We talked about it. It's ad hoc reporting. So it's much easier to use. You don't have to be a technical expert. It helps to learn it faster if you are, but you don't have to be. You don't have to know the data model of Clarity to be able to build reports. And the benefits for that is, one, you can have your business users building reports. And so that's going to cut down on a client. That's going to cut down the report number of requests they get for reports and portlets. So it can save them time. Also, they could use it as a data extract. It's very easy to build something and then quickly export it to Excel. So even if we train the end users and they don't pick up how to build like all the really cool stuff in there, they should at least be able to find the right fields and dump it into Excel. And then they could, put that in another program from there, or they could manipulate it in Excel. Another benefit is, even for us people who are already technical, you can build reports a lot faster. So because you do all the work of the universes in advance, once those are built out, you can build reports much quicker than you could portlet or a crystal report, because you don't have to do the query. It's really just, the query is just drag and drop. So for myself, I like it because I don't have to. I can actually build them faster. If you do a ton of queries, you just, it feels like you're over and over building like that same core stuff over and over again. So this way, you really just build that once in the universe, and then you can build a ton of reports off of that. All right, so accessing InfoView is about the same address I showed you yesterday. This is on port 8081, but in almost all cases, the default is going to be 8080. So almost every client we have is going to be on port 8080. And then it's /InfoView app. And again, this is case sensitive, so the I, the V, and the A have to be capitalized or it won't work. And does everyone still remember which number they are? To do this in the web, so WEBI, the WEBI reporting tool, it requires that you have Java. And with that, it launches this, using Java, this full application right in the web. So actually you could build the entire, very powerful report all from the browser, which is pretty cool when you're doing this for clients, because it's really getting in and out of people's systems. You can just go, you don't have to do this VPN stuff or anything like that. You can just go to the web address. But there's also an alternative. There's something called a WEBI Rich client. And what that is, it's basically the exact same application, just downloaded to your PC. And if you installed the client tools yesterday, that's part of the client tools. If not, you can actually download it from your preferences in here. And we may have to switch to that with everybody in WEBI, if it just grinds to a halt, this server. That's the alternative. But either way we do it, the stuff you'll learn will apply to both.
Is there any difference in the functionality of?
The only difference is the rich client would allow you to use a local Excel file as a data source. So you actually could build reports off of data from an Excel file.
It's like an Excelsior.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the only difference. Also, here, all your documents are stored in business objects. So all your reports will be stored in that file structure we talked about yesterday. With the rich client, you can do it that way, or you could actually store reports locally with the rich client.
So if you do it locally in the local Excel file, how do you upload it? Or
So you use the import wizard to move them, and it makes you, when you move the WEBI report, it forces you to move the universe with it from environment to environment.
so if you plan to do any exchange reports for exchange, you would just
The problem with that is going to be it's going to lose the connection. If you try to put it in someone else's environment, it doesn't know which universe. So you would use that import wizard and use the beer file. What you can do is you can export the reports along with the universe into a beer file, and then in the client system they can import it, and the universe and the report will come in, and they'll just go into the report, and from the report you can switch universes. So they'd go in there and switch universes, and it has a thing pops up that tries to automatically remap the fields. And if it's just the out of the box universe that we'd be using, it'll map exactly very quickly. No, so it'd be just a quick step to just move it over to the other universe. Yep. And there might be a way, I hadn't fully tested it, but you could possibly just provide that file and use the rich client to get that WID file up into the server. And if the universe is named the exact same in their environment as you have it, you have to do a little something tricky in the rich client to get it to work, but you can get it to figure out which universe it should be pointing to.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a couple options.
yeah, so but it is possible.
Yep, there's a couple ways to do it, to get it to someone else's system. Yeah, it's a little tricky because it's meant to just go internally. You can use the import wizard to just move it between environments. Okay, so once you've logged in, you should click on document list. Everyone not able to log in? Okay. And document list is going to pull up that folder structure that we saw yesterday from the CMC. You're going to have a favorites folder, which again, it's per user, only that user can see it. You can create subfolders in there. You have total control. And then you can have a number of public folders that will have a wider available to everybody, or you can set security so maybe certain departments have their own folders. Anyone else is coming up?
Yeah, this is my
Mine's up.
Jen logged it all.
Java 6. If you have Java 7, most of the stuff works, but there's a few pieces that any formatting stuff, like changing fonts, we'll see. I'll show you which parts don't work. So, and that's a huge issue because for other CA applications like the MSP integration, you have to have Java 7.
And this is what, for 13.2 and 13.3, there's a service pack for VM.
Yep.
That service pack allows them to use Java 7.
And that adds support for Java 7, for IE 10, and for Windows 8. So yeah, that's a big issue because when I've done trainings at clients with it all the time, they're like, but we have to have Java 7 for.
They showed it when you sent a doc about it. Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's a new one.
That sets for a whole computer. If you make it
No,
IE specific,
if you create a new one, you can have.
And that's because that's where the reports that are used for Clarity are stored, and so your users have to have access to view them, or they wouldn't be able to run reports from Clarity. And then you can have a number of public folders. I created one called Custom Reports that you guys should all have access to save reports into, or you can save them in your favorites. What you want to do is click on My Favorites, and then there's a few things I want to show you just in here. You can navigate. You can actually, if you click on something here, you can delete as long as you have access. So if it's in your favorites folder, you should be able to delete. You can also copy and paste. And the way I usually set up security for clients is in their public folders. What I'll allow them to do is they can only edit or delete their own reports that they own. See, every report has an owner, whatever user created it. But for other people's reports, they can copy and paste. And when you copy and paste, the version that you paste, you're the owner. And so that version you could modify or delete. And that's a way that you can allow users to share reports, but not edit someone else's report that they're using. So we usually encourage people to use public folders and have them share, because that way, if you have a bunch of PMs that you allow WEBI access, they probably all have similar ideas for reports that would be useful to them. That way they can use what someone else did and just make changes to it.
The client sites typically manage that. They just give anyone rights to go out there, and you can see it getting really messy really quick. I'm talking more from a governance standpoint.
All even do their own stuff, and then they'll just go in and clean up every so often because they're worried people will accidentally delete their own reports and then get mad at them for it.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, and typically, actually, they give access in production. They run these against production. Otherwise, it's really not useful ad hoc reporting if it's not real data. For an existing report you've created, you can modify it. You'll see if you have the rights to modify if you right click and see the option to modify. To create a new report, you would go New, Web Intelligence Document. I'll show you real quick how to view a report. So you could also, you may create a bunch of reports, but you may actually go into InfoView just to view your data as data changes. So to view a report, just double click on it. And I have the security set up. Usually you can view other people's reports. This is just like hardly anything, but I was just testing that the connection worked. So in the view mode of InfoView or WEBI, you'll see you have pages. If it goes on for multiple pages, there's like a setting there you can set how many records per page. Then it can go on for multiple pages. You can zoom in and out. Because I own this report, the option to edit is here. So if I edit it, it will launch that Java application to allow me to edit. I can refresh data. So you notice in the bottom right, there's a refresh date. So the data actually is only refreshed when you tell it to, so not every time you open the report. And so this is what I tell clients, because a lot of times they're nervous about. We've had some that are just, oh my gosh, we can't give people access in production. It'll bring the database to a halt. Everyone will be running queries all the time. And, what I tell them is, look, if you go in, every portlet you run, every time you go to a page, those portlets are running queries against the production database. And if it's a dashboard type page where you have 6 different portlets, that's 6 different queries that are running every time anyone ever goes to the page. So what's the difference between that and doing this? If anything, this is going to help, because every time I view my report, it's not rerunning a query unless I need it to.
Well, and this one's saved in the once you run it once, it's already in the RAM, so it doesn't let it just kind of throws you more data.
Yeah, it saves the data in the report.
And if
So
it's something that you need to customize for them, like with custom objects, you can do a custom universe, tell everyone.
and the data doesn't change all day long. So this actually, if anything, would cut down on the amount of time if they're using this instead of portlets.
Do some of the companies use a mirror database?
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I mean we have some that do that. Yeah, you could do that, and that's if they really like are worried or like basically corporate's telling them they can't do this, then what they can do is do a mirrored database.
Yeah, because
And
that's
do it that way. But you can customize the universes. There's no reason you couldn't take out all the security.
Yeah.
If you want, or build your own that doesn't have security built in. So yeah, as far as I know, there's no license restrictions to how many WEBI users you can have. So if you took out the security from those universes, then you could potentially give access to 1,000 people, and you might only have 50 Clarity users.
so it checks for active users in Clarity, or is it would it be locked?
I'm not sure about that. I have to look at the individual security calls to see if they
If
are.
it is locked, then it doesn't count.
Yeah, and I have to see the security call. We can look at one of these maybe.
That expensive add-on they have to buy for this, or just part of like?
No, it's all part of the Clarity.
It's already in. They either they have it or they don't.
It's already part of anyone who owns Clarity. You own this. Yep, it comes even if you're on demand. It's all installed and ready to go already.
So when you install, so just them, or when you install any Clarity service basically on it?
It's part of any like on demand or whatever. They just install the business object server, and this comes with it. Yeah. Now, CA doesn't just grant people access. You have to request to get access to it, but it's already sitting out there, even for on demand.
I think there's only one client that needed an upgrade recently, and they don't want PO or use PO. But the only thing I would caution is if you decide to open this up to a lot of users, you may want to have a technical person look at the sizing of the PO servers. Typically,
What Bill Yee told me like a month or two ago was that they were evaluating several different software packages for one that they could integrate like right into Clarity, and JasperSoft is the leading one right now that they're looking at using for that. But they said they have no plans to ever get rid of business objects. So what that would mean is they're basically you could do either one, and so we think it's in 13.4, but stuff always changes too because they said they were having problems integrating that JasperSoft with inside their tool. So I don't know. And they also said they are having problems trying to get business objects 4.1 to work. So I don't know what's actually going to be in the release because everything they want to do is was having problems at the time working. So yeah, in 13.4, or maybe it's really the next one if they don't get it in time.
More in the last call layers, and they brought it up again in that same call, and they're talking about 13.4.
They did bring up the ad hoc.
In this last one,
Okay.
That'll be the ad hoc.
Yeah, so I assume they're still planning on JasperSoft for that. So that'll be ad hoc reporting right in the tool. What I don't know is, will that just be out of the box fields? Will there be a way that you could customize it to add any custom fields? So we still don't know all that. So
it seemed pretty small to start with. They
Yeah.
said that they'll be able to add certain things, but not every. I don't know. That they made it
Yeah.
pretty narrow, but so they can make it possible, but they don't want to make it too big.
Okay.
Right.
How do you get to this thing? Because my Firefox wouldn't move forward. It says install missing plugin because I didn't like the Java version. So I've now switched to IE. I'm waiting to get to the document. Okay, I got public documents finally.
So there's almost no differences. Crystal, if you've worked with that, you know that every export version looks different, which is a big pain for people. So with this, you can do any format. If you are planning to do PDF, there are some settings. You just want to make sure you either set it to portrait or landscape and margins and stuff. And when you build it, you want to make sure that whatever you build will fit on one page, so that it'll look nice with PDF. But other than that, I mean, Excel, you can make it look however you want. You notice here there's a tab thing. You can actually have multiple tabs inside one report file. So it's one report, but they actually call each one of these tabs a report. And if you export to Excel, these come across as tabs in Excel. If you export to PDF, what it'll do is print the first tab, then the next, and the next, and the next. So it'll just put them all in one file. So this is really nice with Excel, especially because you could have, one report that you scheduled to run, and it could have a whole bunch of tabs with everything you need to know. So you can just end up getting one file with everything you want.
Are there differences between the versions? I know I emailed you and asked you. Some clients have complained after an upgrade that when they try to export, it doesn't give them save as, or it just opens straight up. Are there differences between the versions of that?
It's not the versions.
Or is that a Java thing?
No, it's not the versions. It's whether you're doing this in the view mode or in the edit mode of the report. So which one will allow you to just open it, and one makes you save it to your computer first before opening it. CSV is just going to be, it's just the value, so it's the same as doing a Clarity Excel export data only. So you can add tons of formatting stuff, like you can do grouping and all sorts of stuff. And then if you do CSV, though, it's just going to give you just the data, right? So that's a nice way you could have a nicely formatted report, but then if someone else just wants to use that and just dump the data and format it in Excel themselves, they can do that.
Doug, how do you get this new document? Do you just create a test document?
To view this?
No, to get to this page of creating a web, do you just do web intelligence new report and then start? Because
yeah, we'll look at that next. Yep, so this is just, I want to show you the view mode, because there's a lot you can do. There's also tracking changes, which we'll talk about later. And there's actually a whole bunch of in-report filtering you can do. Create all sorts of filters that can be applied as they're viewing the report. So with this and some other functionality, you can actually create something that behaves very, very similar to an interactive dashboard, where you can have like a pie thing and you click into it, and it refilters the data and the rest of the report. So you can make it actually really interactive. And the whole thing can run right from Clarity, just like a Crystal report. So you can set up a report in Clarity, the parameters, and then have that launch a WEBI report. And to the end user, most of them would never know the difference of whether you've done it in Crystal or WEBI. Okay, so I'm gonna just to show you, I'll do Excel, and of course.
What Jen and I were chatting about is
IE blocked it.
This is a good way, because like Anthony keeps talking to us, hey, can you do database stuff with these columns?
He's what, twice a week?
Oh,
Yeah, so this is a great way if you can give them, a short demo and give them access, and just show them. Don't even show them all the formatting stuff. Just show them how to use the query panel where the fields are.
They're just going to add to Excel.
Yeah, and then just show them how to dump it in Excel. Yep, and it's a way, because the box, you're welcome to try to test your own if you want, though. Okay, now once you click, this is the test to see whether if your browser's working, basically, with this.
I got logged off and now I get an error. I click on that.
Log off and log on. That's what I had to do. Yeah.
See?
This is what it should bring up. Did anyone get a pop-up asking about Java security?
Yeah. I
Not
did.
security, I got one of them version.
Yeah.
Mine was version. And it says fail validate certificate.
Yeah, I don't, is there a pop-up that comes up?
So
change your Java history or not?
there's some issues because there's a bug in WEBI's underlying code somewhere. What it's blocking is the default template. So when you create a report, it does look ugly. Everything's these bright yellow and blue. And it defaults the text size to 0.
Yeah.
which is great. So the first time I ever tried to use WEBI, that's what happened. Is I was blocking it, and I created a report, and the headers were all this very ugly, like blue or yellow, and then all the row, it looked like I had tons of rows, but they were all empty. And what was happening is the text size was set to 0 because that default template was missing. And so it took me like hours to figure out, what was going on. What's that?
Where would we find that setting so we don't get into it?
There is a way, so it'll ask you every time.
Is that the preferences?
In your Java preferences, you can change something to not, what you can do is when it pops up, you can say, basically, most of the time you think you say yes, 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 and this one you actually have to say no, because it asks, do you want to block this unsigned code or something like that, and you have to say no.
It's just checking if you're awake.
Yeah. And and you could do that every time if you want to get rid of that. There's in your Java security settings, you can change something on your computer so that it actually will ignore if there's mixed, what they call mixed code, or if it's signed in and unsigned.
Well, I thought in WEBI, your preferences here, when you log in, you can tell it to use the Java or use the desktop client.
Yeah, you can. You can have your preferences set to Java and still use a desktop, the rich client. So we can try a couple things, those if it's not working. If not, what we can do is you all have the desktop client already installed, so you guys can switch to that. You're fine.
I'm good. I'm trying to get logged back on that.
Okay.
I'm still
Are you using Java 7 or 6? Good. Okay.
What's it called? Desktop and client?
Yep. For those who, if it's not working for you, you could try to get it working later. Because it's easier to use if you're going to different clients, because you don't have to VPN and stuff. You can just do it from the browser.
IP address.
Okay, so here.
Oh, I found it.
Yeah, I found it.
Because you fix, I can't even log on with my documents anymore.
Oh, it's nice.
Yeah, or if the browser version is just way too slow for you. I think once you get, so for me it was like hard, it was like kind of slow in InfoView, but once I get into WEBI, it's actually totally fine. So you're welcome to, if it is too slow for you though, you can use the rich client as well. That should speed it up. So here I logged into the server, and now what I can do, browse for more data sources. So it's having me create a new document. And then I do this and it'll allow me to pick a universe to use.
Okay.
So did that list come up for you guys?
Yeah.
Pick
Ask for a universe or other data source.
Yep, and here is where you could use an Excel file on your local computer. And here you could pick, I'll do mine. And then it should bring up a view very similar to what you'll see in the web version of WEBI. Okay.
If you have a choice to choose this line, do you prefer doing it over the web or do you prefer using the rich client? Because I understand there's probably pros and cons to both. But.
Yeah, I prefer the rich client. It is less buggy and it's a little quicker because it only really communicates with the server when it has to retrieve data. But majority of the time, I have to use the web client because the rich client communicates with the server on like 3 or 4 different ports, and most of the time those are firewalled off from the server. So most of the time I have to use the web version. And because I'm training people as well, a lot of times they don't have access to install new software, so they have to use the web version. So that's what I usually demo with as well. But yeah, if I had a choice, I'd do the rich client probably.
The other thing I found is rich client actually shows you your unsaved universes as well, but the web wouldn't.
Oh, nice. So you could actually report off of universes saved locally?
Yes.
Nice, without exporting.
Yeah, and it's in italics, so you know it's different than that.
Yeah, but
Nice.
then other users won't be able to use it because it's on your PC or desktop.
Yeah, but if you're developing in testing, you can.
Yeah, so if you're developing, you can actually do that, build reports locally, like test it with WEBI Rich Client before you export it to the server. So that'd be nice. All right. So the main part, back and forth anytime you want between edit query and edit report.
Do you have to add the query before you get to the screen?
We're in the client.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're in the
that's
client.
the query.
Where do you go to edit report?
Yeah, that's what came up.
Oh, yeah, in the Rich Client, create the query first and then click Run, and that'll switch you to the report view. Yeah, there's some small differences, but almost all of it's the same in the Rich Client as it is here. Okay, so I use the investments universe. I'm just going to quickly add some fields so you can see both views. Everything's drag and drop, so I can drag stuff over, or you can double click, and it'll actually add it as well. So whatever's faster for you.
So if you were doing WEBI training in your client, this is the same steps you would be showing.
Yep. I go a little slower, so I'm gonna try to speed it up because I know some of you will get bored because you'll pick up this tool fast.
When we do the double click on a field, even though it has sub fields under it, it only picks up the top.
Yeah, if you want the fields underneath, you can expand it and drag those fields in as well. Okay, you can also drag things to the filters below. And we'll go through all the options there are to filter that. I'm just going to add a simple one here. And then when you're ready to get the data from this, just click Run Query at the top right. And this is one of the ones I was telling you where if anything that comes from a static lookup, it's going to prompt you for the language. Just the way CA built it, but users hate it. I don't mind it myself. But. All right. So when you run query, it does two things. So it refreshes data and then it switches you to the edit report view. You notice what it also did is it created this table in my report with my data. This is a one-time only thing. The first time you ever run a query, to try to save you time if you're doing this really quickly, like doing a data extract, it's going to add a table into your report with all of the fields you added. Any other time you refresh the data or run the query, it's not going to. If I go in and add 10 more fields, it's not going to add them to this table. And the reason is this is just a starting point. There's tons of options you have for, you don't have to have all the fields on the screen. You can create groupings, graphs, charts. So after the first time, it doesn't know what you've changed and what you actually want. So anything new that you add, it'll show up here on the left in this data tab as available fields, and you'll just put them on the screen manually. And I'll show you all of that. Okay, so here's the data that came back. Again, I can switch back and forth between edit report and edit query. You notice some similar things to view mode. You have the last refresh date in the bottom right corner.
Sorry, I lost you there because I'm still in the WEBI Rich client.
Uh-huh.
How did you
On WEBI Rich client, so if I add...
I got the query, I got the table on my screen. If I want to edit the query, where do I go?
Yeah, I'll show you here. So switching back and forth in the Rich client's a little different. So you run the query, and then it'll bring up the edit report view.
Yeah. To
edit the query in Rich client, you go to the data, the top.
Edit query. Others on the right.
Oh, and I guess here, edit query, there's a button. Or under data, you can edit query. And this will bring up the window again.
Yeah, there's no edit report.
Because you have to run it and then that screen.
Yeah, if you change it, or all you do is just, if you didn't make any changes, you can just close this to go back. If I make a change, what it's gonna, and try to close it, are you sure you want to close without saving your modifications? So.
But it didn't add the field that you added.
Yeah, if I go do this and run again, it's going to add the new field.
Oh.
But you see it's here on the left, but again, it didn't add it to my screen.
So you hit refresh and then it'll pop up.
No, actually, we drag this into my report. Yeah, it arranged the fields alphabetically. Okay, to save, you're going to click, for those in the web, this save button in the top left. And you can save it in your favorites, or you should have access to this custom reports folder if you want.
I'm not checking with that. I modified my query and added contact. It shows up on the left side. It doesn't show up on the right side.
You just drag it in. It's all drag and drop. And I'll show you that as well.
Oh, I see. Because on the other screen, I'm really creating the query. This is just the default layout. When you first run it. After
Yep.
that, you gotta go
Yep.
find that.
Because I could do a bunch of stuff. I could remove fields if I want. I could change this into a graph instead. And so it's not going to, it doesn't know how to automatically add new fields because it doesn't know, what you want after that.
Want to change everything back, so.
Doesn't want to undo what you've already done. Yep.
How did you get to that file? Yeah, no, this one,
Well, my
find
web,
the custom.
Okay, so for Rich, are you in Rich Client?
yeah.
So in Rich Client, when you go to save, it's actually having you save locally.
Right.
Okay. To get it up to the server, you do export to CMS.
You have to save it before exporting, or can we just export it?
I don't think you have to save it. You may have to save it locally,
Oh no, I
I'll
think
try.
it's- yeah.
but you do, yeah, for you to get it to the CMS, back to the server, you do file export to CMS. And you can put it, wherever. It looks like it did work without me saving first.
Can you?
But again, if you do without saving first, you see the name is, you can't change the name.
Are we both going to overwrite each other's new web intelligence document?
Yeah, if you're all in there. So, yeah, save it first to change the name. But this way, you could, sometimes like the real power users of WEBI will have them install Rich Client, or they'll install Rich Client because they actually, have all these report files they save locally. They do a ton of just data analysis locally without ever having to go to the CMS.
Okay.
They only export to the CMS stuff they want to share with other people.
We do not have rights to add objects to the folder.
Ah,
Where did you
The custom under the CA Clarity.
okay. Just do your favorites for now then, and we can change the rights later. Okay, also in this view, you have, next to save, there's a drop down. If you click that, you can do save to my computer as. So here you could export right from the edit view as well. Another thing you can do, just like in the view mode, you can click refresh data. That's going to prompt you for the language again. And it's going to run the data, and if you notice, the refresh date updates to right now. And I think in the Rich Client, yeah, it should be about the same.
I was using the financials universe, and one of the options within that was OBS filter, which was already created.
Yeah.
Now, when I bring that in, it asks me for an OBS ID. It doesn't give me a lookup or anything like that.
No, that one is built specifically if you're connecting the report to Clarity. So when I said earlier, we have those detail fields with like the primary keys of tables and the keys of lookups. The reason we need to include those is these reports can be connected to Clarity just like Crystal. You can run them from Clarity. And when you do, in Clarity, you're going to pick a lookup or whatever. So, for example, if they want to filter by projects, you'll do the project browse. And what that's going to pass in behind the scenes is the primary key of the investments table. And so in your filter, in your WEBI report, you're going to need to filter on that primary key. And so that's really where the detail fields come in, is if you connect the report to Clarity. And the built-in OBS filter looks for the primary key of the OBS unit. And so, which is what should be passed in with the OBS lookup in Clarity.
Is someone else also logged in as Rigo U1? Because I'm seeing now multiple reports of my favorites.
Possibly.
I'm number 4.
I think I did 11 or 12 or something, but I don't know.
I think he's 11. You're the
On
top.
time.
So, on that key thing, so you have to
My
have,
name is my
you have to
work
put the
email.
convention details in the university. You also have to put it in.
Oh, I'm not concerned. I'm only concerned about
In the query, and I'll show you how to do that.
So, it's interesting, I didn't realize you could run it right from Clarity. So why wouldn't a lot of people use Clarity reports instead of creating Crystal reports?
Because most people don't know that WEBI exists, don't know what it is, or if they've been built out. So I think it's a huge. I think the biggest reason is I don't know, for whatever reason, CA. I never hear them even talk about WEBI at all. They don't push it at all. They've pushed Excelsius. Even all of their CSP reports they're all Crystal. They didn't do a single WEBI report, and I don't know why.
Must not have get people with WEBI training.
Yeah, they may not have people who know WEBI, and then maybe they have a lot of people who know Crystal. So
or maybe it's possible that the WEBI is running on the server while Crystal and everything is just running on Clarity. That because they don't want everybody logging into the BO side, which is not really sized to way too many users.
What's like the part where it stops then when we would use Crystal then? Like what's that line?
Sub-reports?
Yeah, but no, actually, you can basically do that in WEBI. You could have multiple queries, and each one is feeding a different table or graph. And if you don't have any access to modify the universe, there would be limitations because you could hit points where the data is just not there, or the kind of filter you need to do could not be done with the universe. If you have access to modify the universe, that's no problem. You just go add the fields you need. So that's the other limitation is if they don't have access to modify universes, Crystal is more powerful because I can totally, I can do whatever I want in the query. But if you can change the universe, then the sky's the limit. You can do pretty much anything in there. All right, so I just want to make sure I'm hitting all my stuff here. Words. Okay, I don't need to go through what a universe is and its purpose, but I will show you, because we did that yesterday, or anyone not understanding those. I know some of you guys missed like the first half of the day. You guys understand the universe is okay? The biggest thing people confuse it with, the universe does not hold any data itself. It's not a data mart. It's just really translates it. It's just a structure. So the end users get really confused that sometimes that they think it holds data.
Often you find that you go into a client and they try to build it themselves and they're just a hot mess. Like you have to go in.
Yeah, I say anytime the clients do it themselves, it's usually a hot mess. The only ones, actually, the Federal Reserve are the only ones that have done it well, and they just have some really good technical people, and they have some really smart technical people that went out and learned how to do it on their own, and they did it very well, actually. Most of the places, what I see is the universe is just a complete mess. They have like 6 different developers, and they've all gone in there. Anytime they needed a WEBI report, they did a derived table or something because they only know SQL. They never really knew business objects or WEBI, and they just write the query, and then they go in and build a report.
Patches on patches on patches.
Yeah.
Patches literally working.
Yeah, and so that's one I'm dealing with right now. We're trying to pitch. Okay. If they go to the WEBI class at all, the first little bit I'm going to do a little like intro. And then like the second half is actually I'm going to show some advanced tips and tricks for those who already use WEBI that wanted to see some advanced stuff. Yeah.
All the charts.
All right, so I just want to show you real quick basically what's in each universe so that you'll know what's already out there. I'll start with the programs and side projects. This is going to give you programs that are associated with these projects or whatever project this is here. You have this team. You have issues, risks, and change requests. You have the work breakdown structure. So here are your tasks, and then your assignments. Okay, and then every universe actually has OBS, and the way they did OBS is a little different. They wanted to make it generalized, so this actually could be used to filter any OBS. So if they have 3 or 4 different OBSs, they could use this. Also, in the investments universe, this is the investment OBS. So they don't have the resource OBS in here. So if you want to look at, you want to take some investments and the resources, and then you want to see what resource OBS is, you have to use the resource universe. That's going to have the resource OBS. So the OBS type name, if you would add this to the filter, you could then filter to just one OBS instead of if you had 3 or 4. They have the full path, and then this is the ones that come from one of that data mart table where they have each individual level.
They have the IDs form.
Not for the levels. They have the internal. This is just the end unit, the leaf. They have the ID for that.
Are you still in your test report, which is where you're expanding, or did you open the universe again?
I'm just in my report here, just seeing what's available. Yeah. You also have, we talked about a predefined filter. Here's one of them. If I add this to the filter, there's no options like I have with these others because it's predefined. This particular one is meant for if you connect this to Clarity. So this is going to filter for OBS, and what it needs is the primary key of the OBS unit. So if you use the OBS filter, like the OBS lookup, it should pass in the correct value to filter on OBS. But if you're just doing stuff in WEBI only, it's not useful because people aren't going to know what the ID is of that. I'll show you in a little later how we recommend filtering on OBS. Here's the big piece that we'll have in every universe. We have dates and measures, and the way this works, they've separated out a lot of the measures. And remember, measures are the ones that automatically aggregate. So in the investments one, I can actually look at equipment, material, expenses. I'm going to go into labor, and you'll see that everything, I can get FTEs, FTE percent, hours, or cost. I can do it for actuals, allocations, availability, baseline, any of that, ETC. And if you just want a one number summary, you just bring in this field. So if I do labor actual hours and I run this, I'm going to get just a single number summary for whatever I have in here. In this case, let me get the project. Okay. Whether it's project, task, resource, whatever it is, I get the one number summary, right? Those who write a lot of queries, there's a few different places to get that. So with this, it's just bringing the really quick and easy summary where you're not actually using the time slices. To use the time slices so you can see that by period, you combine that, something in the measures folder with something in this dates folder. So the purpose of this dates folder is to utilize time slices. And depending on which date you bring in, it's going to force it to use one time slice or another.
You can use that.
Yep. So if I bring in monthly start date or monthly end date, either one. And I add month. It's now split it up by month.
So can you go the way our time user?
Yeah.
There it is.
So even though, so the same field showed hours, but as soon as you added another field, instead of pulling from that one field, then you start pulling.
Yeah, and that's what's awesome about WEBI is that's the point of these measures and why it's separated out into its own folder. Because that same field, you could look at hours on a task, on an assignment, on a project, total hours on a program. You could have some custom field, and you could look at hours per this custom field. Rather than have to have an individual hours field in each one of those, you have one measure, and you can use any dimension or detail to slice and dice that measure, including the dates.
That was when they did universe. How did they say, hey, under these situations, just grab the assignment record. In these situations, grab the slice.
The slice stuff is a little more difficult. The rest of it, just looking by, but it's a way that they can actually, based on certain things, they can pick where that field comes from.
Do you know when you're looking at this? So if you just look at labor actuals, and the project has been going on for 5 years now, how do you know, are you getting everything or just getting the piece from the time slices?
If you're splitting up, if you're just looking at the one number summary, it's everything. If you use a time slice, just like doing a portlet or a crystal report.
It's all, but if you just go by dates, then it would be slices.
Yep. So if you split it up by date, it's going to use slices.
That's fine.
Yep. So on this side, for each one, you can use the start or the end date. It doesn't matter. You can use both, right? Either one's going to force it to use that particular slice. It only has quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily. And these go off of some of the slices that are set up in that time slice table by default. So you could change those to change the dates to expand the period.
Does it go by fiscal periods as well?
I'm not sure about that. It goes by, I'm not sure if it goes by fiscal periods or not. I have to see on that. One thing you can't do is you can't combine monthly and weekly or weekly and daily. Just like if you were doing a query, you'd use one. The way they did this stuff where it picks which slice to use, it'll throw an error if you try to do something from two different time slice.
Can you put in the filter to choose which one?
To choose weekly
Or monthly?
Not easily. Yeah, not easily. There's some. What you could do is do daily, and then in the report you can group by week and month and year. And then what you could do is have them pass something in where they say, monthly, weekly, daily, whatever they want. And then in your report, it's all coming from daily, but in your report, then you would use that to decide whether you're grouping it by day, week, or month. Yeah, so that's how you'd have to do it. Unless if you make changes to the universe, you could do it. You can do it differently.
Yeah.
But just with the out of the box, that's how you'd have to do it.
Have you had to do that for a lot of reports?
No. Generally, they pick one. Yeah. Or you can have multiple queries in one report too. So you could do, a monthly, a weekly, and a daily query.
Oh, like the tab.
Yeah, just like there's tabs here.
Yeah.
And I'll show you that as well. Okay.
In order to get the resource name there, you got the team folder.
Yeah, you can either get the resource name from the team folder, and that's anyone who's on the team, or if you go to if you go to the assignments folder, there's a resource name there, and that would give you just people who are assigned to tasks. Okay, so let me show you the other ones. I'll show you the other ones real quick, and then we can take a break here. What's that? They're not?
They're not meant for you to sit and relax.
No, my folks are.
It's being slow in here.
Can you do a drill down from one query to another, one report to another?
Here we go. All right, so this is the resources one. Again, you have OBS, but this is the resource OBS this time. You have dates, and I also forgot to mention there's also predefined filters as well. And it'll tell you which slice it's coming from so that you can be sure that in the results you match weekly to weekly or daily to daily. So it's dates, and then it has measures. And in the measures, these are only labor. Now there's only one folder, but it still has the same views of FTEs, percent, hours, or cost. And then you have resources. Here we have extra information like the contact info, the financial fields for the resource, resource skills. And then you have investments that this resource is on. And then you have some stuff particular to the team. So stuff on the team tab if they're on that investment. And then you can look at the work breakdown structure of the investment. So obviously that's projects only. And then the assignments. So it's a lot of the same data. It's just flipped, coming at it from the resource side versus the investment side. But you do have extra resource fields that you don't have on the other one.
And that OBS is based off of resource OBS.
Yep, that's a resource. Okay, let's do financials. Okay, so financials, investments. This is the investment OBS. They have chargebacks. We have investments. We have some of the financial fields here. And then the work breakdown structure, again, pending WIP, WIP transactions, more chargeback stuff, financial fields, and then you have actually financial plans, the detailed cost, benefit, and budget plans. And here you have like the high level stuff, and then each individual line of the cost or budget plan you can see as well. So almost all the financial information is right in here as well. So this one's used if you need chargebacks or if you need like detailed financial information. And the last one is timesheets. Here we have OBS. This is looks like the resource OBS. You have resource fields. You have just a few measures, time entry hours. This is the main one here. You have your timesheet periods. Timesheet, like some overall stuff about the timesheet, and then each timesheet entry, including timesheet notes are here. Then just a few fields from the investments and tasks that are on the timesheet, and incidents as well on the timesheet. And then there's one special folder, missing timesheets. If you filter, if you put something in from this folder, it's going to filter the report for only people who have never actually even looked at the timesheet. So the timesheet was never created. Okay, so if you want to really do missing timesheets, what you'd probably do is you would need to get stuff from missing timesheets where they never looked at it, and then you also are going to have to do another query for unsubmitted, like ones who have looked at it and saved it but never submitted it.
So that's good. Good thing. Question is, when you bring these fields in the report and you have it, now how do you know where they got it from?
So once I bring it in, you can hover over it, and there's a pop-up help is that what you're talking about, what folder it came from?
Yeah.
Yep. It only works for results. In the query filter, unfortunately, there's no way to know. If you're unsure, you'd have to just remove it and add it again. But in here, yeah, there's help that comes up that'll tell you exactly where it comes from. Or if you click on it, it'll actually go right to it on the left. So if I'm down here and I click on it, it moves to it. In each query, you can only use one universe. So each of these queries is using a different one. But yeah, so that's how you could bring it from multiple universes. You would do them in separate queries. Now there's limitations to that. So I can't put stuff from two different queries into the same table. The fields you need aren't in the same universe. Like in the investments universe, let's say you need the OBS for the investment, and you also need to see the OBS for the resource. You would just add the resource OBS to that universe. It wouldn't take too long to add that. And that would be the way to do it. So that way, you have it, and you don't have to do. There is some ways you can use something called merge dimensions, that you can combine stuff from multiple queries. It essentially does a join inside the report. It's just kind of tricky to use and less efficient. So I only do that if I have no access to edit the universe.
So why would you have to add the resource OBS into the universe? I have no idea if the universe.
Because these universes you wouldn't link together. These out of the box ones you wouldn't link. You'd only link a custom universe into each one of these. So in your custom universe, you could put the resource OBS, and then it'd be then linked to all of these. So then in the investment and the investment financials, you would now have the resource OBS available as well.
So when you create a WEBI that wants to use a custom universe that's linked to the core ones, which one do you pick? The linked one?
Yeah, the linked one, and then you have all the fields from the core universes. Yep, they'll all show up.
I have another question. These little tricks like this timesheets and all that, is there some documentation together about that? Yeah, a lot of it's pretty self documenting how it is, but there's stuff like that that you're not gonna be able to figure out.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not. CA has the Universe Developer Guide. All it is, though, is it goes through. It basically lists out every universe and every field that's in every universe, but all it does is give you the name. It's the exact same information that's already in here. So there's no additional information about. So it's not. I don't even really give it to people because it's not really that helpful. Yeah. So CA hasn't. There's no documentation out there. We're in the middle of trying to develop a user's guide, like for WEBI for Clarity. So, and then we would like give that or sell it as part of when we do training. Yeah. Okay. Any questions on what's in these different universes? As you can see, some reports you could do, in any of these universes actually, if they're just a few fields. And then if you have more resource fields, it might be one field or another that pushes you to use one universe or another, depending on the set of fields you have.
You said there were limitations. How many queries can we put in one?
I think as many as you want. Yeah. It's just that you can't. So in the same table, I can't put a field from one query and a field from another. But you can on the same page. I could have a table from this query, a graph from another query, another table. So you can make a dashboard view where each little thing comes from a different query, and that's fine. And it could even come from a totally different data source. So that's a way that you could really combine data from, if you built a universe off Jira or something else, you could combine it all into one report that way. Okay. Do you guys want to do like a 10-minute break?
Yes.
Is that good? Okay.
Process had time to go jump in the pool.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
There's someone in there at breakfast.
Or eat some more food because we have lots of stuff still.
Lots of bagels and lots of donuts.
You have less donuts with my blood sugar. Maybe on purpose.
So it's just one bagel. So you had a bagel, right?
No, I grazed one day.
Oh, okay. So you came fully prepared, but eventually I think that doesn't bring any bagels. Sorry.
Next time I'll know everything else.
Does Walmer's wife
Oh, does anybody know where tomorrow's training is going to be?
in here from?
What time is it?
Tomorrow.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is
tomorrow it's Dave saying stop writing crappy code.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, the ones didn't show up.
Yeah, then you get a specific request that you need to be there. Your code size.
I realized, I looked on that guy's site, like, I looked at that thing I made for this, and I sucked like them.
We'll talk about the query view a little more. So I showed you how to just drag and drop fields into your results. For the filter, there's a ton of options. So, for example, let's do something like a project name. So the first set of options, you've got equal to, not equal to, greater than and less than, between two values, in list or not in list. With that, it's a multi-select, so you can do more than one. And then is null, is not null, and then matches pattern. That allows you to do essentially a database pattern search. So in that case, the wildcard is a %sign, just like it would be in SQL. But you can use that to do a pattern search. All right, so if I do, let's just do simple equals to. It defaults to just typing in a constant, so you would type in the project name in this case. But there's additional options under the second dropdown. Here you can do values from a list, prompt, and then these are, we'll talk about these later, these are more advanced ones, but values from a list actually brings a pop-up just like a lookup. Only this, the way it gets this list is it goes out to the database and retrieves every possible value. And from this, you can just select the one and move it over. Or if it's a big long list, you can actually search. Like if I search laser, it'll search just in this list. And then click OK, and now you've got the filter. Okay, if I do, let's do like project ID in list, if I change it to values, here I can do multiple. So again, you can search and you could do multiple values. Okay, what the prompt does, if you do a prompt, it changes it to, instead of actually entering the value, you're entering the text to prompt the user. So here it says enter the value for project name. So if I run this, just like it prompted me for language, it's going to prompt me now also for the project name.
Can you use wildcard?
Where in
the prompt? But probably not, because this is a list.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can search in this list, and I can search and just pick one. But yeah, you might be able to, I've never tried, if I do matches pattern, values from a list, you know, you can type in your own value. So I could do % laser %. And because it's matches pattern, that should actually, you know, give me anything with laser in the title. If I change this to prompt, you notice there's actually an additional icon here that pops up, the prompt properties. Here I can set things like whether or not to allow them to have a list of values. So prompt with list of values. If not, they'll just have to enter the text. Remember the last values that are selected. Pick only from the list versus having the option to enter a new value. And then an optional prompt. So by default, they're all required. So if you change this to optional, what happens is now it would let me run the query without ever selecting this. It says optional next to it. So by default, they're all required. But if you want to match the functionality of like a portlet or something where you have 10 different things that they could filter on, you'll make them all optional. And then they can choose what they want to filter on. It makes it more universal. So a lot of different people could use the report. These are also important when you if you link this to Clarity, then what you put in here is what you have to put as the parameter in Clarity, that parameter bind code. So if I'm connecting this to Clarity, I would change this to something like param project or whatever. You don't have to start with param, but just something that I can easily remember. And when I go to Clarity, when I create the parameter in Clarity, the bind code is going to have to match this exactly. And that's going to link those two up. Now, obviously, I wouldn't do it on project name. So part of when you convert this to run in Clarity, if it's just a WEBI report, you're not going to have your prompts based on the primary key. You're not going to put this internal project ID because this doesn't even have values from a list. That's in the database, or actually in the query. Sorry, not in the universe. When you go to the properties of each of these, there's an option under there whether to have a list of values or not. And so most of these have them, some of these don't. But either way, they're not going to know that 7-digit number. They would probably have a prompt on something like project name. So if you want to take this and now put it and have it as a report that runs from Clarity, you'd probably replace something like this where they're prompting on project name and replace it with something like this where it's a prompt for the internal project ID, because in Clarity then you're going to put in the project lookup that's going to pass in this ID. So there's a little bit of a, usually if there's a report that WEBI users will run direct from WEBI and also Clarity users, we usually create two separate reports because the kind of prompts that you would want are going to be different. Okay. Talk about the other ones later. Do project name and list. Okay, these come back pretty quick. Some clients, it can take a second to bring up this list if there's a huge amount of data. If you're looking for stuff in the universe, you can either go through, if you know the structure and you know what folder it's probably in, you can do that way. If not, you can actually search up here. So if I'm looking for resource name, the problem is going to be the first one that comes up isn't always the one you want. You have to look where it's at. So this one's in the applications, the application team, which if your users put that in, you're going to get no results because probably the rest of your stuff is looking for projects. So you just hit enter to scroll through all the matches before you find the one that's in the right folder. You can also do wildcards in this search with an asterisk. So if I search for that status, I get booking status, I get all sorts of statuses. So you have to put the asterisk. If I just search for status without that, it's just going to start at the beginning of the word. So it's kind of, that's one of my complaints is here to search anywhere in there, you have to use an asterisk at the beginning so it matches exactly what would be in Clarity. If I do matches pattern here, the wildcard is a %sign. And if I do list of values and I search here, it actually automatically searches anywhere in that. So 3 ways to search different things, and every one of them is different as far as how they handle wildcards.
Is the one because the one when you do the second one you showed, that one's by using SQL.
Yeah, that's why this
Like
uses
using a
SQL.
program, like Clarity does, and here it is. Yeah, different way of searching.
Yeah, so it's different every time. So when you start putting multiple things in your where clause or in your filter here, you have to decide how these all relate. So it defaults to and, just like if you're doing a where clause in a query. If you double click on and, it changes it to or. So you do and or. And you can also do nested stuff of ands and ors. To do that, you take one that you've added and you drop it on top of another one. And that creates a nesting. And then each one you can do ands and ors. Yeah, so that way you can do some more advanced filtering.
Can you see a SQL version?
Yep. So with your query, you have this SQL button, and this is going to let you view. Exactly. If you have all the fields are in here, I've done that when I want to bind, like I need to get it out the door quick. Use this to just generate the query, or even just normally I'll do this as a base, and then I'll modify and clean it up, and make sure it's not generating like horrible SQL. So, and take out like the security call they put in every one. Again, there's this security call they're doing. And maybe a tool you can tell me, I don't know if you can see right away if this is checking for only active users. This is where it passes in whoever's logged in.
It uses that
the username.
To look for permissions.
But it looks like if you select use custom SQL, you can edit the SQL.
You can. So there's an edit SQL right that you can get, and I've turned that off for these users. But by default, it's on. You can edit the SQL. So you actually could.
Could you change the custom call, like the security call it makes by default?
Yeah, you could
change in the background.
You could remove the custom security call.
Yeah, you just remove it. You can just change it so see if you're locked, it doesn't matter.
Right from where your cursor is, you would remove everything.
Right, all this stuff. But you don't know. Can you tell right now if this is checking whether the users are active or locked?
It just looks like it's a user.
Oh, it's a view, right?
So the view might be generating only active. So you have to check.
On the view what the view is.
But you could either remove security from the universe, or you could change a different security call where it doesn't check if they're active or not.
Just that they exist.
Yeah.
The only other thing to look at is the tables. There's some video reporting tables.
By default, they can use custom SQL, and I usually turn that off for the WEBI users, because if they know SQL, they could come in here and just delete the security call, and they can see everything. The only restriction with this is that you have to return the same number of columns that you have built, and the columns have to be the same data type. So string, date, whatever. But you could actually build this and then come in here and just completely change what it's actually returning. But again, I don't do it. I mean, unless you're doing some crazy thing. But for the most part, because the problem is, if you even on this screen, if you even rearrange a field like this, it regenerates the SQL, and it's going to undo everything you did. So if you make any changes at all, it's going to undo that. So if it's not generating what you want, what you should do is go to the universe and change it. But the only time I usually do this is when I'm testing stuff. I'll come in here and delete the security call if I'm testing this with a user that's not in Clarity. But that's usually the only changes I make. But yeah, you could actually do a whole bunch of stuff here. But it's great too, because you could use this if it's not getting the results you expect. You could take this and test it in your database tool, or you could use this to generate a query.
Why is it disabled?
I turned it off for all these users because for WEBI users, I like to disable using custom SQL because they could get around the security call.
So even though it's our universe, what rights you gave?
Yep, it's what rights I gave to the users. Yep.
Question on filters. Can you pass a multi-select filter from Clarity?
Yep, you can. You do in list here,
okay.
And that passes a multi-select.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, you can also do, I mentioned how you can do more than one query. Doing it this way, these separate queries, again, the limitation is they can't be in the same table in your report. But you can rename these as well. So if you have a bunch, you would rename each query to what it's regenerating. And you can also duplicate the query too. So if you're building one that's similar, but not exactly. And you can also do combined query. I saw you guys talking about over here. So combined query, it's this button here. This does, if you double click union, you can do intersection, minus, or union. Okay, so that's just like in SQL if you do union, intersection, or minus. And same thing as if you were doing the SQL yourself, the result objects, it has to return the same number of columns, and the data types have to be the same, right? Just like if you're doing the SQL yourself. So it defaults to, it brings in the same results with no filter, but you can change this. It's just the regular stipulations on a combined query. This is helpful. I mentioned missing timesheets earlier. If you want to get timesheets that were never created, so they never clicked on timesheet, and ones that weren't submitted, you would do a combined query, is the way that you could do it in WEBI. And the first part would use that special missing timesheet section, and the next one would just use the regular fields, but then look for where the status is unsubmitted. And that would then give you both. So with all these different things you can do, you can pretty much recreate, almost any query that you would write by hand. And again, if you can't get exactly what you want, you can always just, if you have access to the universe, you can modify the universe. All right. Any questions on the query? One more thing.
Sorry, you said any questions? If we save this back again, the query gets saved in the report?
Yep, and the data gets saved with it as well. So if you have data, like if you run the query, it saves, whenever you save a report, it saves the data with it.
Can we not just save the query back in the report so that it can become available in the future rather than the data coming back?
No, it saves it all together. You can always refresh the data.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the reason why we were seeing the test data and the report.
Yep, because it saves the data, so that way you wouldn't have to refresh every time.
Okay.
There's some settings you could change, and sometimes when they're really worried about security, they'll change the settings where it forces you to refresh the query at every time you run the report. So that way you don't accidentally see what someone else ran the report for. One more thing, you see this properties tab. Here you could set limits just on this query, on a row limit or a time limit. And the big thing you might do here, this is where you could actually change which universe this comes from. So if I change it from investments Oracle to investments MSQL, it's the exact same. And I click OK. What it'll do is give me a prompt to remap the fields. And it tries to find and it's actually really good at finding the correct match. But if it doesn't match up correctly, you can use this to pick the correct match. And this is how you could move things from one universe to another. So if you start doing it with one universe and you realize, oops, I actually should have done it with a different one, you could actually switch it over. Or a lot of times what people will do when they make a bunch of changes to a universe, and then they move it to production, if they've got a ton of WEBI users with reports, what they'll do is name the new universes with a different version, like version 2, and then they give people a certain window of time to move their reports over to the new universe, to go into the properties and move it to the new universe and remap the fields. And then after that time, they turn off the old universe. Now that's only really necessary if you totally revamp the universe, like you move all the fields around in folders. If you just have added some new fields, and you could just update the universe and all the reports are going to be fine. But if you've totally revamped the universe, or in cases like with an upgrade, upgraded Clarity and the data model has changed, that could be a case where you may want to do it this way, where you actually do it. You would remap it to the new universe one report at a time. Okay. So here I've moved it over, and now it's going from the other universe. All right. Let me get rid of some of these. Labor action. Okay, I'm going to bring in task and assignment information as well.
Looks like as long as people have rights, you can lock them.
I was going to add WBS. I'll add the task name. Now in the assignment, I'll add the resource name just so we can see some. Different stuff here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this entire table. To remove anything, you can drag it off to the left. You can always, you can right click and delete it. I'm going to say this again too. Okay, to add a new, so now I've got a blank slate. One way to add a new table is to use Shift and just highlight all the, or Control, highlight all the fields you want and drag them over. And that's going to create a new table with everything you dragged over. To remove fields, you can just click either on the header or the body here and drag it off to the left. To move things around, I can click on one and there I can replace. Or if I click on it and move it in between two, I can just slide it over in between. You got to be very careful where you drop it though. So here is, you look at the help window, replace, in between you insert. If you go just above though, like this, or below, it's actually adding it on a new row. You also have undo, redo up here. Yeah, so you can undo stuff as well.
So if you actually just delete the field, not the field, the header, like resource name, if you just delete that, it doesn't delete, just delete resource name, you can undo it.
Yep. Yep, and you can undo and redo back to the last time you saved.
Oh, cool.
So then once you save it, makes the changes permanent. Dragging in new fields is the same. You can drag in and replace or put it between. Just make sure and don't do above or below. You can even add the same field twice here. Okay. You can also rename these headers. So I can take this, if you double click, I'll call this status. And now it's renamed. Report title, I can put this projects. So creative. Yeah. All right. So that's one way, just dragging stuff over is one way to create. I'm going to drag this whole table off to the left, start over again. Another way, we haven't gone through these other tabs here. The next one is called templates. This shows you all the different kinds of report elements you can have. So what we've been doing so far, the default is a vertical table. So if I drag that into my report, I just get a blank table. And then I switch to data, and I can start adding fields. And I can build a table this way. Here's a horizontal table. I can, if I drag stuff in, what you'll see is it's just flipped on its side, transposed. So the headers are on the here, and each row is a new row, or each column is actually a row of the data. And
combination.
Yeah, it's called a crosstab.
Oh.
So I'll show you that. To switch between, you can actually take vertical table and drop it right on top of this, and it just switches it between the different types. Okay. Another type is form. If I click on this, it gives a view. I think of it as basically it takes all the same record and groups it all in one place and then the next. So it's kind of like this is a handy view for something like matching what you see on like a Clarity edit screen, right? Having all the fields like this. The last type is crosstab, and I can drag this on here, but
So Crystal should have it, doesn't
yeah. Well, Crystal has a crosstab. It's just terrible. Yeah. So here, when you convert something to a crosstab, it like I don't know how it decides what's on the headers on this side versus the top. So I usually don't create crosstabs that way. What I'll usually do is do just a regular vertical table here. The other way to create a crosstab is to take the field that you want to go across the headers, and you drag it just above the table until you see this pop up. Drop here to create a crosstab. And then it'll take that field and spread it across.
Is there a way that you can edit the crosstab? Like if you were to create one, can you edit where the fields are, the headers?
Yeah. So here I can take resource name and drop it and replace it. And now this is going to be done by resource. Or you can add multiple fields on the rows or on the headers. You could have multiple ones on the headers too.
Can you have another header on the right hand side?
On this side?
No, I mean on top of the dates. Can you?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good one. I don't know if there's a good one here, but I can do like that.
Okay.
And you could have, yeah, so you could have multiple dimensions on either side. So if you're not familiar with the crosstab, it essentially crunches vertical and horizontal table together, and it's a way to put a bunch of information in a small space. If your primary thing you're looking at is some kind of metric or measure, so hours or costs or something, it's exactly like a pivot table in Excel. So at the intersection of each, you find a measure, and you can have more than one measure too. So if I had more than one measure here, I could have for each intersection, I could have a few measures. So this is the most common view people like, is where you have the either weeks or months or something going across like this, because this matches like the time scale view in Clarity, and you could have multiple measures inside each of these.
So if you have green, and the green is, can you have green as the top header, and then have the 5 weeks, and then have red 5 weeks?
Like the status indicator.
No, up, yeah, up. And
so like this.
Yeah, and can you drag the date now below green? So it wouldn't merge all those greens into one cell.
Oh, here?
Yeah.
Like spanning.
Oh, you can though. We'll talk about that. It's a break, and then you can span this across it. So yeah, you can do that. We'll talk about that, how you could span values across instead of repeating it like this. Yep.
Because one of the reports requirements I got is, how do you show projects by stages, and then above stages you might have, oh, this is planning, this is execution, stuff like that.
Yeah, and you can do that in here. So we'll talk about doing breaks and sections, and those are ways to group stuff together. All right, so I showed you the different table forms you can do. You also have charts. So there's bar charts, line, area, pie, and radar. Tons of different chart types. Again, I can bring in a blank one and add the fields, or I can drag this on top of an existing, like this, and it'll use that same data to generate the chart. Okay, so it's labor actual hours here by month, and somehow I'm missing the key, but it looks like every color is a different project. That's what it's doing. So the other way is to do a blank one. So if I do a pie chart, actually before I do that, let me tell you about, let me add a vertical table with some fields. Okay, so what we've been viewing in this report view is the results view. You see the actual data. You can also click view structure, and this instead shows you the field names. So those who do Crystal, it's the same idea where in Crystal reports you have like a structure view and then a results view. You toggle between with this, there's a view results and view structure. And you'll click that to toggle between the two. So depending on what you're doing, one might be easier than another. The reason I mention it now is because when I do a pie chart, when I do a chart, it's going to switch me to the view restructure mode. And the reason is if I go to view results, there's nothing to display yet in a chart until you actually put something in there. So I'll go to view structure to put things in. And again, it's drag and drop. It tells me place dimension object here, place measure here. So measure is what I'm measuring. The dimension is how I'm splitting up the pie chart into sections. So I'll do this by project. Okay, and there's my results by project. Or I could do it by, right by status indicator. Okay. And then
Boring, because those are pulled from Clarity, and then it just picks colors, right?
Well, but yellow is green and red is yellow.
oh yeah, because it doesn't
It doesn't.
It doesn't know.
Oh, you see how I see.
Are you colorblind?
There's a bunch of, we haven't gotten to this properties tab yet. We'll get to that later.
Okay.
But with everything, there's like a million properties you can set to change stuff like that. Like basically what set of colors to pick from for this. So if you don't like the colors it's picking, you can do your own color palette. I can take the different chart types and I can drop them on here, right? And I'll take the same data. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. A line chart. Okay. So you can take that to easily switch between how you're viewing the data. The last types of field are freestanding. So that's just a cell sitting out by itself. That's what this title is up here. So under freestanding cells, you have formula and text cells, and the first one is a blank cell. You drag that in, and it's just an empty cell that you could put in text, you could put in a field, whatever. Okay, that's just like this title. You also have some specialty fields, like the last refresh date. I bring that in, and that's going to give me this data date. So that's really helpful to put on your reports if you're printing them or exporting a PDF or something. That way people, when they see the report in PDF form, they'll know exactly when that data was valid. And then you can have some cool stuff like query summary. This actually tells you how many rows, when the date, and it tells you the query definition. It'll tell you what's in the results and what's in the filter. You can also do a prompt summary. So if you have any prompts, it's going to tell you the name of the prompt and the value selected. And there's actually an even more advanced way. We'll get to formulas and functions today, where you can get the value for one specific prompt rather than just getting a list of all of them. Yeah, you can create a variable or a formula where you actually look at one specific value. And you could use that to then kind of change how your report looks based on a certain parameter that they enter in.
Can you create virtual fields in here?
Yeah.
In the report?
Yeah, you can create virtual fields or variables in here. And then under here you have page numbers. So you can put in page numbers if you're doing something to PDF. That'll help. From the structure view, you can also see that up here there's actually a header, a page header, and at the bottom there's a page footer. So if you do want anything to repeat on each page in a PDF or something, you can add stuff up there. And you can also change the size of these. You can make them smaller or bigger. All right. So that's the different, any question on the different report elements available? Okay, I'm trying to run through stuff quick so that we can get to, because I know you guys are bright enough. Most of my students are not technical, so you guys are bright enough that even if you see it once, you'll probably be able to figure out how to do it again later on your own.
Well, to call you bright?
To call you bright. All right. So the next thing I'll do is how to structure your data. So we've looked at tables, we looked at graphs and charts and just fields sitting out there. So let me create a table with I'm in structure view. Let me switch to results. Okay, project resource. Yeah, actual hours. All right, so with this, actually, let me do task too. All right, so I'm getting some detailed information. All right, let's say this isn't formatted nice, right? If I want to dump it to Excel, this is fine, but you've got project name repeating, task name repeating. It's not very readable. So what you might want to do is actually group this by project or task or something to make it look a little nicer. So one thing you can do is it's called a break. And what that does is it's going to take this table and it's going to split it up based on whatever field I'm selecting. So if I highlight the project name column, and then it's this icon right here, it looks like a bunch of little squares, it's insert remove break. So if I click that, it's actually going to break up my table into groups based on that. And there's some additional settings we'll go through where with this, for example, I can in these properties we'll look at, I can choose to display it on every line, display it once. I can choose to center this across the break so it's more centered. It created a footer for the break here. I can remove the footer entirely. Also, I can remove this blank space it puts between. There's an option to whether to repeat this header every time there's a break or not. So you can really customize how it's displaying. And this is how you could do what you were asking, how you could have multiple groupings in a crosstab and then have it centered across that. Okay. And then you can I can break on a second one like this. To remove the break, you just click on the column again and then just check the button, click the button again to get rid of it.
Why would we want to have the break?
It makes it a little more readable, right? So
the grouping sort of.
So it's grouping it. Yep, it's grouping it within the table. You can also do summations. So on a measure field like this, you see this sum. This looks like what's that called? I can't remember. Sigma, right? So if I click that, it's going to insert a sum at the bottom. So it inserts a new row, puts the word sum, and puts the sum of everything. Okay, if I click this drop down, there's other options like count, average, min, max, or percentage. So I can do a count here. A count you could do on any one of these fields. Let's do average. Okay, it adds a new row for each. The one that's a little different is percentage. that one's going to add a row at the bottom and to the right. So at the bottom, it's just going to say percentage 100%. To the right, it's going to give you a percentage of the total. Okay, for each one. So what you'll see now is if we do a break, okay, here it's still putting it at the bottom, but we could add, if I do this again, if you break first and then you add the sum, it actually does a sum instead for everything inside the break, right? So for each project, it's got a sum. So it's got subtotals now for each. Okay. So there's a bunch, we'll get into formulas and functions, but there's a bunch more you can do with this besides these default ones you have. This is just a quick way to insert the sums. Okay, so I'm going to dump this and again. Another thing you'll see, another way to group data besides a break is called a section. And a section not only creates a group just for this table, it's a group across the whole report. Or this whole report tab, I should say. To do that, I'll take the field I want to group on and drag it above. So it'll say cross tab, and I drag it even higher, and then it'll say drop here to create a section. Okay. So this, I don't like breaks that much. They have their uses, but I prefer sections. I think they look better. If we go to the view structure, once you start working with sections, sometimes structure view is easier. You'll see what's happening. We have the section start and end, and this whole section is going to repeat for all the data.
Can you insert print breaks or page breaks?
Yeah, you can. Okay, so back to results view. With this one, what's different is it's not only going to do this split this table up, anything else I put in the section. So if I put a pie chart in, so I'm back in structure view, and I put it inside the section, I can now put in, let's do it by resource, hours by resource. And what you're going to see is that that chart is repeated for each section. Let's actually move down a little bit. And each time it's filtered just for this group or this section. So you group by a field, and then inside that section, everything is just limited to, in this case, build laser lab. So I could have as many charts, graphs, whatever inside there, and they're all going to be limited to just this build laser lab. Okay, I'll take this out. And you can add multiple sections, so sections within sections. So next I'm going to do, let's do task name. And right off the bat, it's a little hard to see what's going on. If I switch to structure, you'll see that I'm grouping by project and then grouping by task, and then I have my table. So oftentimes, it's good to do something like this where you indent so that it's a little more obvious that it's grouped on this, then this. And you could change the formatting, like make this bigger and bolder and make this a little smaller. Like I'll change this to, size 10. And now you can more easily see that here's the project, each task, and then each resource on the task. So you can do groups within groups within groups. You can do all sorts of sections. you drag a field just to its own area. And you can actually drag it here from the left too. So even if it's not in your table yet, you can still drag it in and create a section. All right. Now what I want to talk about with this is what I call calculation context. So what you'll see, let me take this labor actual hours and I'll insert the sum. So you can see a sum. Again, this is just a subtotal for each of these little groups. Let's say I put in a blank field. So I put in a page, not page number, sorry. I'm a blank cell. And I am going to put it right here. Now in that blank cell, I drag in labor actual hours. Okay, this is where we'll see the power of measures. You notice what this is doing is, because this is inside this section, it's giving me the same thing as this subtotal, right? It matches the subtotal. It's giving me all the labor actual hours inside this section. If I take this field and I right click and copy, and then I paste it, let's paste it if I can grab it here. Okay. And I want to put it in this section, and then I copy it again, and I'm going to paste it here at the top. Okay, so same exact field, all I did is copy and paste it. What you're going to see is in the inner section, it's giving the total for this. At this level, it's giving me the total for the entire project. And then outside the sections, it's giving me a total for the whole report. So measures, with a measure, you always have to think of the context of the measure. And the context of a measure is based on what dimensions are in the table with it, or if it's inside a section, that's going to tell you what the context is. So there is no context, it's all hours. Here, the context is based on project name. It's just for one project. Inside one of these, this is the hours for build laser lab and the gather documentation task. So I can move that field between these, and it's going to give me a different result. So that's both good and bad. So I take this, I move it here, and I move it here. Different value every time, okay? So it actually makes it really cool because you can quickly do subtotals and summaries. The only time it's frustrating is you have to understand it, because otherwise you can get frustrated if I have the total up here and I say, okay, well, rather than just have a total once, I want to show the grand total, in every one of these sections so I can easily compare. So I say, okay, well, I'll just move it here. Well, and now it changes. So there is a way to do something like that, and we'll hopefully talk about it at the end of today, because it's more advanced stuff. But and the same thing happens just inside a table. So if I'm going to get rid of these sections, and what you see here is the context of this measure is for each resource. And as I add stuff, the context changes, and this is drilling in now. And then I add task, and now it's looking even deeper in, and I get more rows. So with measures, you always have to think about, okay, what does that mean? What's the context? If I add a monthly start date, the context gets even deeper. And now it's going to push it. If you see up here, it pushes it to multiple pages. Now I've got 2 pages. And you saw that with the table too. Or a graph, if I put a graph in a section, it repeats for every section. If I put that at the top, outside the sections, it's just going to display once for all the data. Any questions on that calculation context, the measure context, or doing the sections? It's all the same in the rich client.
Getting this stupid errors of browsers.
Yeah. Have you opened up the rich client yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So those of you who are getting errors, just use the rich client and you'll be fine.
This stuff is really hard
It is. Yeah. And there's, you know,
because if
We're-
you compare that to Crystal report, that is 10 times more time.
yeah. Because the biggest thing in Crystal a lot of times is formatting. And
Also by pixel.
yeah. Yep. And doing a crosstab type thing is that in Crystal you have to create every column. Here it's a snap to do it. Presentation I've done at a couple different users groups, and it goes through all the reporting strategies out there. Another thing you can do here is sorting. So by default, it sorts by whatever column is first. To do the sorting, there's this A to Z here, and you can do ascending, descending, or custom.
Yeah.
And then if you have, like if you want to sort on one field, then another field, like several sorts, it'll sort them in whatever order you applied the sorts. So if I apply this sort next, it's going to first sort by project, then task. Okay, and then you uncheck this to remove the sort. Okay, so that's the basics of the report. So scheduling, and then afterwards we'll get back more into advanced stuff. So if I have a report, here are my favorites. Here's the one I was working on. I can right-click and go to schedule. So one way to run the report right is double-click and just view it. And I can refresh the data and save it in here. If I save it, it's just all it's doing is saving the new set of data that I refreshed. If you want to schedule in advance, or if you want to, instead of just showing the latest data, if you want to see historical, like every time you ran it, you want to see the data, be able to go back later and look at the data set, you can schedule. So if you right click on it and go to schedule, there's a number of options you can set as soon as this loads up. The first option is going to be the instance title. You can just leave that alone. You'll see later where that shows up. If you have the report scheduled multiple times for different things, the instance title is helpful when you go in later to see which one is which. But if you're not doing that, it's not a big deal. Sure. Do that one more time.
Like execute
Most
process,
environments,
like Clarity, that like execute a process, how you can title it, and then you'll see what was run in the past. That way.
Yeah. Yep. You can see a history. So most environments, this is actually really quick. So it's just because this is, you know, the only server we had. So anyone trying to go schedule, anyone getting this to come up yet?
I'm not going to run down your server. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do it.
Well, sometimes you guys, mine doesn't work and you guys are having no problem.
I couldn't even log in again. It kept giving me random stuff.
Are you guys using the rich client then?
Yeah, because it was taking forever to load, so I'm like, it's no point.
I've never scheduled in the rich client, actually. I don't know. I think it's an InfoView thing, so I don't think you can.
I was gonna say, I didn't think it was the actual client that, can't you schedule a report too?
That's in the
Yeah.
Clarity side though, too, though.
Yeah, but you can schedule a crystal report in business objects also. Okay, because I clicked on it so many times it screwed up. It should only have one of these schedules. And so here's the instance title. Then you can set recurrence. So here you can choose now, once at a certain time, or there's a whole bunch of options you can do.
There's not a minute option.
There's no cron.
No, it's easier to do than cron. So basically, almost anything, any options you want, you can set here for when to run it. Prompts. So if you've created your report in the query with prompts, this would allow you to set all the prompt values to whatever you want. And then this one is formats and destination. So first we'll just run it in here, and it defaults to web intelligence format. So I'll just schedule it, and then we'll go through the formatting options is really where we want to focus on what you can do with this. Now what this is going to jump to is the history, but I'll show you how to get to that yourself. One thing you'll see now that I've scheduled it once, you'll see under instances it says 1. So every time it's been scheduled and run, I should say every time it's been run through scheduling, you'll see this increment. When you just refresh the report, yeah, it doesn't. So now I right click and go to history, and this will show me a list of every time it was run. It'll show that instance title that we set. It'll show the date and time that it was run. It'll show who ran it. Any parameters that were set, it'll show here. And then it'll show under the format, we picked web intelligence, and that shows here. I can also refresh this list, so it's running now. I don't know. Yeah, you can, now you can, in business objects, you can set stuff so that it limits it to like 100 instances or whatever. But by default, it will just store everything since it, yeah, all time. So I don't know why it comes back instantly and it's just running.
Yeah, I know.
Something on the server. Maybe I'll try. Maybe it's because I messed it up when I scheduled it. I clicked on it too many times. So I think I didn't even change anything. Let me try scheduling again.
And you can send it as a PDF. You can email it to the user.
Yeah. Now they're both running.
You can even stick it to a file system.
You can. Okay, so one of them is a success. So once it's a success, historically I can go back and click on any instance, and it's going to bring up the data from that instance. So you could keep a record, really. You could schedule it once a week or once a month, and you could look back historically how things changed. So let me show you the different. I mean, recurrence is easy to follow what that is, and prompts. So formats and destination is what I want to show you. If you do a different format, like PDF or Excel, and schedule, what'll happen is the web intelligence format's the web version. So with that, if I click on it, it just opens in my browser, and from there I could export to any format I want. But if I know in advance I want it in Excel or PDF, I can schedule it in that format. And now when I click on it, rather than opening it in the web, it's going to go straight to the Excel.
Here's the part. If you create a WEBI report and FTP account separate file to FTP server, that gets you to the FTP server, and then the other system can actually take it. So you can actually build an interface off this.
You could. Yep, and we have people who've done that.
Yeah, that would be cool if you put it onto a thing and have it log in, so every week it's updating the project, you can open reports.
Yeah. So here it goes straight to Excel, right? So I don't have to go that intermediary step. You can also reschedule. So that's helpful if I've entered a bunch of parameters or something. Rather than have to enter those in again, I can click on something in the history and go actions reschedule. And that's going to keep everything I set. So if I change the instance title, the prompts, the formats, it's going to keep it all. Okay, these are what's really, really cool about this. And you can actually do all this scheduling with Crystal reports as well. If you just log in through InfoView, you can do all this type of stuff. So one thing is, I won't go into all this, but inbox actually puts it in this special folder called inbox for another WEBI user. Many people don't use that. File location would let you, so once I check a box for this, then I click formats, options, and settings to actually see the options. It defaults to use job server defaults. I uncheck that, and now I have an option, the directory, and then what to name the file, and if there's a username and password needed. So here, I could map a network drive on my server, and I could save this to that network drive. And you could have another application. You could have SharePoint pick it up. You could have, anything. You could do a CSV file, and like you were saying, you could build an interface where this schedules. Yep, it'd be really easy, and then it gets input into another application. Okay. FTP, same thing. Click on this, uncheck defaults, and then here you could do the same thing. You could do remote server now. You could FTP.
And it doesn't have any issues with the secure FTP.
I'm not sure if it does secure FTP or not.
You think it would already be already located on the same server?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll let you. The most often used is email. So if I do email and I uncheck job server defaults, I can actually put in from, to, and I can put in a list with commas of a bunch of email addresses. And the coolest thing is you can add the report as an attachment. And you can specify name or automatically generate it. So it means you could attach the Excel or PDF report right to the email and send it out to a list of email addresses.
Can you set it like a group of people, or do you have everything in there written out?
You have it all written out, but this is all saved in the history. So what you can do is reschedule, and it'll bring in all your settings. So that way you don't have to type in all the email addresses again.
What we would do is create a distribution.
Yeah, you can do distribution list. And to do this, to be able to email, there's a couple things on the admin side. You have to just set up email settings, just like you do in the Clarity NSA. You put like the server, the port, and then if you have a username and password needed for the mail server. And remember that list of servers we looked at, the like 28 or whatever, 30 servers? There's two, one for Crystal and one for WEBI, that you need to set to allow either Crystal or WEBI to send out emails when you schedule. Or Excel, either way. Or you can have it sent out as WEBI format. In that case, it would send the WID file. So if they have the rich client, they could open up the WID file. Or CSV, actually, you can send a CSV. And so people have used that as a SharePoint integration as well, because I guess in SharePoint, you can set up an email address where you email it to it, and it actually adds it to something to a list. So there's a tons of options. Email's people's favorite because that's what they hate about scheduling and Clarity, is that it doesn't send the actual report itself. So this is a way around that.
And you can send Crystal reports
Through this too, yep. The only problem with this, those email settings, they're very simple, but for on-demand customers, a lot of them have a problem. CA won't do the setup for them, and you don't have access to that when you're on demand. Even though they give you access to a mail server for Clarity in the NSA, they won't put those same settings in business objects. So that's what customers have been telling me, is that on-demand won't let you do it. We do have a couple where they've talked them into doing it. So as far as on-demand, when we tell them that you can do this, you have to tell them you may have to pester CA a bit to get them to set up. The setup is, I'll just show you that just really quick, if it'll come up quick. And you can actually set up in here, I'll show you. You can make it easier for people to send it to an FTP or something, or a folder. So you go to servers, and you'd have to do it, if you want WEBI and Crystal, you have to do it in two places. So one server is for WEBI, one's for Crystal. And the WEBI one is this adaptive job server, I believe. always confused, but you just double click, and there's an option for destination. Okay, and here you see I've set up email already, and I set up a mail server specifically for, so this will work with mail. But you won't have this here if you've never set it up. So all you would do is you select mail, email, and then most of the time, if it's like an internal one, you just need the host and the port, and that's it. And if it's like a client's internal server, and you could just do whatever's in the NSA, and most of the time it works unless their server only allows certain IP addresses, so you have to work with the team to get that added. The other ones, you can do file system, and what this would allow you to do is set the defaults. So you could set up a directory, so that way when they do that, they can have a default place in the file system that it would go. But email's the big one, but like I said, the setup is extremely simple. And you just do it in 2 places, and then you can schedule an email through with Crystal or WEBI. Yeah. All right, any questions on scheduling? Okay, I can show you, but email, or if you guys want to schedule one of your reports, I have email set up for WEBI in here, so it should work. So if you want to, you could try scheduling one of your reports and emailing it to you if you want, just to play around with it. Except Jen. All right, so where we're at, we've covered some of this stuff down here, but we're going to talk about multiple report tabs, numbers and dates, and the properties tab. And then we're going to talk about creating variables and functions. Okay, and as I go through, I'm going to go through fast this stuff, but if you want to, be in WEBI playing around and try to follow along, you're welcome to. So I'm going to have to log in again. So was anyone able to save in that custom reports folder, or no?
Oh, I was in the thing where you have to upload it.
Okay.
My favorites, I haven't
It's
saved.
just in your favorites. Okay. This will come up here. Yeah, I'll do it here in the rich clients. So all right. To add another report tab, you can just right click on the tab here. You have some options to either rename. So if you rename the tab, then if you export that to Excel, that name comes through as the tabs in Excel. You can duplicate. So perhaps you want in a report like this, well, that's just project stuff, but maybe I would group by project manager here, and then I could duplicate this report. It just duplicates it into a new tab. And then in this one, maybe I group it by something different. So it's a way that you could do a bunch of stuff and then kind of have different views of the data in a different tab. Or you can just insert a blank report. Numbers and dates. Let's see if this lets me edit. So I don't know if you guys tried. This is the one custom universe I did, and it works bringing in data. The other thing that's good with the rich client is it doesn't time out on you. So in InfoView, I was inactive, so it timed me out. here, this has been sitting for probably a few hours since I used this, and I can still just hop right in and start.
I usually thought we do this disconnect when we're doing.
You can. So when you first open Rich Client, there's an option that says use offline mode.
It'll just download a ton of stuff and then you can build it.
I'm not sure if it'll let you use the universes. I know you could do that and use Excel as your data source, but you may be able to, if you have a report already with data in it, you may be able to go and change it. But if you try to, you won't be able to download new information. Yeah. Okay, so with this, let's put in, let's actually group this by project and add task. And the task start date. Okay, so for a date like this, well, I'll start with a number. So let me put in actuals. For a number, to format this number, you can right click on it and go to format number, right? And you have, you select number, you have a bunch of options, or you can custom, or currency if it's dollars. You have some options and you can customize. So here I can change it to that. For dates, you actually go to format numbers as well. So they don't have a format date. It's inside format number. And there's a date time option. So here, there's a number of options, or you can customize.
Is the customability for this, when you customize the number format, is similar to what's offered in Excel?
Yeah. Yeah. Any of the formatting options. Let's see if this is up yet. Well, actually, I'll have to do it from scratch.
Can you color code those dates or numbers?
You can. I'll show you guys that today as well.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to use, I haven't done resource universe, so I'll use resource. No, maybe I do have to. Relog in. When I tried to pull down a new universe, I didn't like that. Let's see what's faster. Okay, this came up. All right, so I'm just going to do like resource name, investment name, and task name. Oops, phase. And then I'm going to put in, let's do week, let's do monthly. That's probably coming up. And I'll do actually, let's do, if I can find allocation hours, let's see if that gets stuff back. Because I want to show you a trick with the formatting the dates. Okay, does anybody have any?
I saw some in the first page. Or wherever it started.
Let me, I'll do available hours because I know those will be there.
Is there a way to customize it to exclude zeros and it would only show
Yeah.
rows with them?
Yeah, but you could do it in the query, or I'll show you another way to do it too. Okay, so available, let's check that. Jeez, okay, there we go. This will have more for, I think, just certain months. All right, so for availability, right, we don't care about this stuff. if I do a cross tab, right, that's what we've done before. Oh, there's so many empty values. I'll just do actual.
Rate of BTC.
There it is. I could try cost. I don't remember if I did the rate matrix or not. All right, so here we've got some. Ooh, yeah, it's bringing all these new users. Okay, so this is the view commonly desired, right, for weeks or months, is having these go across. People just don't often like this format. So the best way to do this, if you can just format the date and leave out the day, and that way, if you want to just display months, there is a function you can use where you get the month out of a date. But the problem with that is then these columns will be sorted alphabetically by the name of the month, which you don't want. So if you do format number, you have to do a custom one. And it's really simple. It's so 1M is just like a 1 number month. 2M's is a 2 number month. 3M's is a 3-letter abbreviation, and then 4M's is the full month name. Day, 1D, or you could do 2Ds. And then year, 2Ys is just 2-digit, and 4Ys is 4. So what you might want to do for this is MMM-YY. And then now you've got it formatted a little better for a monthly view.
Where did the headers go on your y-axis? The like resources and everything. Why is it not? Do they just disappear on that?
Resources are over here.
Yeah.
I changed the query a few times, so I don't know if that was if I got rid of something or.
No,
So you just want to see a header on?
Yeah, I just want to see a header.
Oh, where it says what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so with the cross tab, it condenses things down, but what you lose is you don't then have a header that tells you what stuff
Can you
is.
do a vertical header? Like you want to
Yeah, you could enter your
resources.
yeah, you could put your own in. You could add a column here, and I think you can. I can't remember if you can rotate text. You might be able to rotate text. But yeah, so with the cross tab, you lose the header name in order to try to condense things down. So that's the big formatting thing people do. All right, let's talk about properties. So this is where we come to a point where if you have Java 7 instead of 6, you won't be able to do this. This is how you can tell if your version of Java is working. If this properties tab, when you click on something, if it's all blank, and if these things up here, the font, bold, italics, if all of this is grayed out when you click on like a cell, it means you have Java 7, and that's the part that's not compatible. Everything else works though, so you can actually do most stuff in WEBI except that. And again, that's fixed with CA just released a service pack with 13.3 that would bring, but it's on the business objects server. You'd have to install it to
Don't go
add support.
even get us started.
So most of the clients aren't going to have that yet. But if that's
it's available in the FTP site. But
right, it's available. But
install it, it's a nightmare to get that in. And on Windows, they even have a tiny hotfix, which goes and breaks the custom params setting.
Yeah, so it would be it's a process. So if they need to do that, if not, I think Dave, you said there might be a workaround
Yeah, I think there's.
where you can basically you can have Java 6 and 7. That's fine. You can do that by default, but there might be something where you can force WEBI to use Java 6. Are any of you not having the properties tab? Are any of you having that issue? Where,
The strange thing is, I know I'm on 7, but it seems to work.
okay.
Well, then I should try 7 and see if it works.
Anyone else, is that happening where the properties tab here is
For me,
empty?
it is.
For you it is too?
Yeah,
And the
it's,
rich clients?
it's grayed out.
Are you in the rich client or the,
Rich client.
okay, it still doesn't work in the rich client.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
grayed out.
That's what I was wondering. I haven't tried it in the rich client. Okay. So that's the, that's the holdup. So in training, I usually have people downgrade if possible, but sometimes there's conflicts. Stuff like the MSP connector has to be 7, a Java 7. So it's not always a possibility to downgrade. But you could do a lot of stuff without the properties tab.
Sorry, my properties tab has text, but the font stuff is grayed out.
Okay.
What do you mean by font stuff?
This up here is grayed out?
Yeah.
When you click on a box, like an individual cell.
Oh, it's good. No,
Okay, so yours might be fine.
not really.
All right, so the properties, not for you.
No, I clicked on background color and or name, and nothing like the top bars.
No,
Report, just in the white space. In here, you have things like the name of the report, a background color, or you can put a background image. How many records to display, horizontally and vertically per page. And then page layout. If you're going to PDF, this is where you could set portrait or landscape, what paper size, and the margins. So that's where all that will come from. If I go,
Let you set it here, or do we need to expand it so that it catch the number or something?
what do you mean?
Oh,
Yep, you just type it in right there. Yep, and there's drop downs and stuff you can change. So on a text field like this, you have things like auto fitting the width and height. You can manually specify how many pixels wide and tall it is. You can change text formatting here as well. Horizontal and vertical alignment, background colors and image borders. Get to that. Let's do an individual cell. Here again, you can auto fit the width or the height.
Yeah, we'll just do that to like automatic scaling to pages too.
What do you mean?
So like in Excel, you can zoom, you can say I might have all these columns that might not quite fit on one page, but it'll automatically scale them down so it fits one page.
I don't think there's a way to scale it down to automatically scale to one page. All right, you can merge cells. So that's another way that you could, like up here, I can right click here and say insert row above. Actually, that won't work for this. I have to do a page break because this is dynamic. But you can merge cells together. So just like Excel, you can highlight multiple and merge. You can format the text. That's the basics there. If you highlight an entire table like this, you can do a number of things like show header, show footers. You can uncheck or check that stuff. Show rows with empty values. You can format separately the header cells, the body cells, and the footer cells. You can turn on or off this alternating the row, like the colors of each row. You can turn that on and off or change the colors. If I change this, let me change it back to this. If you have sorting applied, so if I sort on a couple columns and look at the table properties, anytime you see a ... in the properties, it means there's another box that will pop up. Here, if I had a bunch of sort fields, I could change the order that they're sorted, like which one has the highest priority. there's also like paging stuff, like when to do page breaks. For sections, you can have new sections start on a new page. So I can create, you know, if I have a section here and I highlight the section, that section has properties too. Like a new page, and every time there's a new group. Okay, so just pretty much everything has properties, and then graphs, the same thing. There's a ton of ways you could customize the graph, the color palette, all sorts of stuff. You can display the, what do they call that, a key? I can't remember. Legend. You can display it or not display it. So it's all in the properties for graph. One important one, if I do, say, a pie chart here, and I want to see the resource by hours. Okay, let's say I want to display this right below my table. What happens is we don't know how many rows are going to be in each of these. So in some cases, it's getting, things are overlapping. So what you can do is use, on the properties, there's something called relative position. And you can do this with graphs or tables, anything, a text field. And if you click on the ... next to that, what you can do is specify the position, not based on the sides and the top, but based on relation to something else in the report.
So relation to like another section?
Yeah. Block 1, in this case, is the name that was given to this table right here. So if I do the left edge, I'll do 0 pixels from the left edge of block 1. That will line up the left edges perfectly. And then with this, I'll do the bottom edge of block 1. I'll put it always 20 pixels from the bottom edge. And that was just, if I click on this, you'll see the name.
Oh, okay.
So here you'll see it's perfectly positioned every time.
So once you go through and do that one, it will change the other ones going next.
Yep, because it's it's just a section being repeated. And you'll know, if you go to the view structure, you'll see this, I don't know if you can see these little arrows and stuff, these dashes, that's telling you it's anchored to that
Now,
other
if we
one.
were to do something, if we were to tie it to a section, could we have the formatting different for every section rather than tying it to the block?
You can have it relative to the section as far as where it's located, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I always say is, when in doubt, if you think, oh, I'd like it to look differently, you know, click on it and go to the properties and just explore around, because there's tons of ways to customize how it looks and how it goes through pages and all that. So there's tons of ways to do that. So I won't have time to go through all of them, but any questions on so far on properties? How to put a picture? Yeah, there's a couple. It's a little weird because you can either put it in a cell, like, so if you're doing an icon, you like red, yellow, green, you could put it in the cell. Or if you were just want like a company logo or something, you could do a freestanding cell and put it in there. Yep. And then what you'll do is go to properties and
Background image.
yeah, background image. There we go. And there's a couple ways. You can upload an image from a file, or you can, if you have a URL for it, put the URL here. Yep.
Would that be dynamic? The URL? So if the image changes on the URL?
Yep. If the image changes in the URL, it'll pick it up.
Bad reports.
We go through creating variables. So there's a couple tools you can turn on that help with this. this is like the stop point. I usually would stop for like a one-day class for business users. So for you guys, I'll show you like all the stuff that we've done. I've kind of done drag and drop, easy to use. And there's another way to do it all as well. What you can do is you see in this structure view where you can kind of see the table, the names of the fields. What's helpful in the results view, you can turn on, you see this FX in the top left? This turns on the formula bar like you would have in Excel. And this is going to show me the underlying field. And what I can do is rather than dragging and dropping this in, I could either type this in and there's help. So I could change this to now this way it doesn't automatically change the headers for me with the drag and drop, but I can change that.
Why would you drag and drop? Changes everything.
And I could also say equals, and I could drag it from here into the up there too.
Can you do like equals casting plus another field?
Yep. It's a full like formula bar, like in Excel. You can do functions, all sorts of stuff.
Can you do if then?
Yep, all that's available. So if I turn on, like if I go to my actual hours and I insert a average, what we can see now if we go to this, what's actually happening is it's inserting the function average. So that's a quick way to do it, but you could just type this stuff in yourself too. Along with this, if you want some more space or some more help, you can click on the FX that's inside here, and you get the formula editor. Here you have all your data, all your functions, and operators. And almost anything you'll find in Excel, you'd find here. So you have if then else, you have aggregate functions, statistic functions, all of that's available. And where that comes in handy is if you start doing some more complex stuff, even if it's just addition, subtraction, all of that. So you can edit this directly. Another way you can do it is if you want to actually, you can create a variable, and when you save it, it shows up in your data tab. So let's do, I'm going to try to see if this will come in. Some available hours. All right. I got to get rid of a bunch of this stuff though. Take out month. Let's do total. There we go. Okay. Actually, available hours doesn't mean a whole lot without that, but okay. With these, let's say I want to calculate the allocation percent. It's very simple. It's allocation hours divided by available hours, right? It's for each period. So what I can do, right next to the FX button, there's a variable editor button. So with that, you see the same function like editor you have here, only now I can give it a name. And I can decide whether it's a dimension, a measure, or a detail. So this will be a measure. and it's going to be allocation hours divided by available hours. And I click OK. And now it shows up just like the rest. And I can use it just like any other field. Let me do it more by month. Trying to find where there's some stuff here. So, and here it says allocation percent. It behaves just like any other field. The only difference is if I double click on the other ones, nothing happens. If I double click on a variable, it opens it up to be able to modify. So this is a very simple one, but you can come up with very complex formulas. You know, you can use if then else to group things in a way that they aren't normally grouped just from the data itself. Okay, some of the most common I'll go through some of the most common functions that people use. Oops, I might have broken this. Yeah. Okay. So some of these average count, right? You would use these to do like totals and stuff. And again, you can use those quick buttons, but you could also just create a variable or use this to do it. You got character stuff, modifying like text, like strings, finding substrings within strings. Date and time, you have a lot of stuff like getting the current date and time, days between two dates, getting the month or quarter or week or year of a date.
What are the limitations to the formulas compared to Excel? I know that there's a lot you can do, but I know there's going to be probably some limitations, like nesting and things like that.
What do you mean nesting?
Like nesting in Excel, you could take two formulas and essentially put them in one.
Yeah, you can do a formula of a formula. So in my formula here, in my variable, I could reference another variable.
Okay.
Is that what you mean? So you could have a variable that uses another variable.
Similar to that.
Can you lock this functionality and not let them create formulas? Is there security at that level?
There may be. There's a ton of like granular security. I haven't tried to do this one specifically, but yeah, you might be able to do that.
Well, I mean, I can see people using it to create basic reports and then going in here and doing something crazy that they don't want to do.
And then it breaks and then they call it.
Yeah. So yeah, I like to think of it as, for the most part, something you could do in an Excel function you could do in here. So you don't have advanced programming stuff like you would in Crystal where you can do loops. But you have what we have in Excel, like if then else would be like the only like probably advanced programming thing you could do. So you end up finding a ton of uses for that when you start doing more advanced reports. You can create your own formulas and save those. So even as just concatenation, you know, same thing. You could put a couple text fields together. All right. Did that.
Hey, we've already made it past where normal people usually make it.
Yep, we have.
I hope we're about to
All right. So someone mentioned earlier, how would we highlight something? So, like depending on the value or something.
Conditional formatting.
Yep. Conditional formatting, if you're familiar with that in Excel, you can do that here. They're called alerters. It's this button right here. And I'm trying to get this data down. Let me add something.
Are all those users active?
Allocation hours greater than 0. So this should limit it down, I hope. And no.
So why didn't that work?
I don't know.
Oh.
Just kind of get this data down to something more.
Anything, yeah.
That'll get it down.
Get rid of all those, yeah.
All those new ones, and then it should be mostly stuff that has data.
Real time.
All right, that's better at least. Okay, so I'll put back in. I don't want to do that. Okay, so what I can do for this, let me just bring this back to allocation hours only, and then I'll do a cross tab. Which goes way too far past. So let me do, again, let's do monthly start date greater than okay, so now we have some stuff. Okay, so what I'll do, so to create an alerter, you would create an alerter separate from actually applying it to an individual cell. So you could create one alerter and apply it to a bunch of cells. So first I create it, and there's two ways to do it. One, as far as your criteria, you can base it off of any field. You can just pick a direct field. Like here, I'm going to do allocation hours. The other way is to do cell contents, and I'll show you that as well. So I'll say allocation hours, say if it's greater than 160. So here is your criteria. And then if that turns out to be true, I click on format, and this is where I decide what's going to change if it's true. It defaults to change the text color. If I change that back to default, then actually nothing would end up changing. So everything says default right here. But I could change the background color, let's say, to red. Click OK. Click OK. Now I have it created. I can click on a cell. So this is actually all these cells, right? Because it's across. It was actually just one cell here. And I'll click the checkbox next to the alerter.
So you create the alerter first and then apply it.
Yep. Yep. And if I did this instead of a cross tab, I'll show you another. So you can see what you could do with this is I could say, well, that's not highlighted enough for me. I want to highlight the entire row. So you can click on each of these and apply the alerter to each of them. Because we referred to allocation percent, each of these rows, that's true, even though that's not what's actually in the cell. Now, if I go to alerters and I click edit, and I change this instead of allocation hours, I change it to cell contents. Click OK. Anytime you do cell contents, it's going to give you this warning that it's using stripped objects, which just means that depending on where I apply it, it's going to have different results. That's all it's warning me about. Because now it's trying to, in each of these, what it's trying to do is see if the cell contents are greater than 160. So it's converting that text to a number somehow, numeric, like ASCII value or something, and then it's evaluating. So we're getting weird results like this. But you might want to do cell contents if you have a bunch of different fields, but the alerter would really be the same. Like, for example, a red, yellow, green. Like you might, on a status report thing, you might have a bunch of different fields that return red, yellow, or green. And each of those you want to do some conditional formatting, but it's the same. If it's red, highlight the background red. If it says yellow, and that way you could use one alerter to apply it to a bunch of different things by using cell contents. So I'm going to click on this cell and uncheck it for these two. Oops. Keep missing the text box. Okay, here we go. All right, along with that, we can also add more than one condition. So I click plus here, and it's always going to do and, though, in between each of these. So I could add a bunch of conditions. And if I click the ... rather than typing in a value, you could actually compare this. You could check if it's empty or, let's see, let's do a different one. Let's do, if I did resource name, I could select values. So here it brings up all the resources in the report. Or I can select another. Like I could say, basically, if resource name is equal to select an object or variable, you know, if I had something else, resource manager or whatever, if they're their own resource manager, then that's a problem or something. So there's a bunch of stuff you can do here. Along with that, let's change this back to contents greater than. You can do a sub-alerter, and all that means is it's a whole nother alerter, it's all just contained in one. So wherever you apply it, it's going to apply all of these alerters.
So that's kind of like an alert, right? I mean, you could have, it would have
Yeah.
the first one.
Yep. And it'll go through the first. It's basically like an if-then or something,
Yeah.
you'd think. It'll look at the first. If that doesn't turn out to be true, it'll go to the next one.
So if you have that and you realize that your sequencing is off, can you move them? Or you have to delete them and then read
I think maybe remove them. I don't think I've seen a way you can change the order. Generally, this would be used for like a red, yellow, green. So you could say, you know, if this value equals 1, set it to green. If the value is 2, yellow. So this way you could do red, yellow, green, or you could just put a number of alerters and apply it to the same cell. And each one has all of those. You know, you can do a bunch of different conditions on each. I'm going to remove these. The other thing you can do is under the format, you can do stuff like changing the font, changing the background color, image. So you could actually have like a red, yellow, green icon. So I've seen some people actually figure out like what the URL is in Clarity to those 3 images, like the stoplight images, and then reference the URL so they actually have the same images from Clarity coming in.
Can you only have one alert per cell?
No, you can apply a bunch of alerters to one.
What if it hit? What if the condition was not on 2 alerts?
Whichever one comes first, it'll do.
Can you rearrange the alert? You know what I mean? On that first window where you're checking?
If you put them in the same, like where you do sub alerters like this, you can't rearrange. You just have to do them in the right order.
But I'm saying on the other one. So say I had 2 alerters in this window here, and I applied them both to the same cell.
Yeah, you can move them up and down. And I think it would do the first one, but I haven't tested that to see if you had conflicting ones, which one it would do. But here, what you could do is each sub alerter for, for red, we would pick the red image. For the green one, we pick the green image. So you could do, dynamic. So change even what is displayed, not just like different properties of it. Under this display section, if I type in here too high.
Right, there's one you want to say green instead.
Yep. Now it's going to overwrite the value and put too high. And along with that, I can not only just type text, but I can click the FX, and I could do full-on formulas, to dynamically change whatever the value is that displays there. So this is helpful when you do like divide by 0 stuff. What you can do is, basically check if it's, so maybe that divide by 0 error, then have it just, display something else instead of that error. Okay, any questions on the conditional formatting?
Mini alerters.
I mean, yeah, same thing. Alerters. All right.
With the conditional formatting, kind of, how is it going to work in the front end when a user tries to run that?
Same thing. They'll view the same way. It'll have all the condition. And when you export to Excel, it'll have all that formatting still. Excel or PDF. Yeah, all that formatting comes through, which is cool. Okay, let's talk more about filtering. So as far as filtering down our data, all we've done so far is filter at the query level. And there's also additional filters you can apply inside the report itself. So what I could do, let's get rid of.
So what's the advantage of?
Like
when would you choose one?
I'll show you when. So here we have the resources. And let's actually do months. Okay. So to do in report filters, it's this button on the top left that says show hide filter pane. And this shows this new pane at the top. And if you notice, depending on where I click, the text changes. If I click on the background, it says report filter applied to report 1. If I click on the table, it says applied to block result. If I click on an individual cell, same thing, block result. If I had sections in here, it would change. If I clicked on a section, it would say report filters applied to this section. So what I could do is on this table, I highlight the entire table, and it says this is applied to just this block result. And I can drag in here any of the fields from my report. So I can, and including formula fields. So I could say monthly start date, drag that in, and now I have filter I can apply. I can say where this is less than, actually let's do in list. And then you can type stuff in, or if you click values from a list, it's going to display all the values, but only the ones that are in the report, not everything from the database. So what I could do is use this to just do 2013 here. Okay. Now this table only is filter for 2013. If I put a new table in, this one still has everything. So you can apply filters to individual report elements separately. Or you can filter this entire report tab. So another way to do this, actually, let's do this. Let's get rid of this. And what I'm going to do is create a new formula, call it year. I'll do dimension, and I'll do equals year of monthly start date. And then I click on the background, drag in year, and I say I want that to be equal to 2013. Now this whole tab is done. But if I go ahead and duplicate that, let me remove this one, and remove this filter on this one, this tab has everything. This tab only has 2013. So now that I've kind of shown you what it is, the reason you might do it this way is, first of all, we always want to apply filters at the database level, right? So at the query level if we can, unless it means that I can do several reports in one query. If that's the case, it actually is probably more advantageous to have your query have more broad set of data, and then you could have individual report elements or tabs of the report that are filtering it down. So, one thing you might do is in the query, get 3 years of data, and then each tab you could have, 2012, 2013, 2014, each filtered separately. Or sometimes people might do doing a resource report. They might look at employees versus contractors, and maybe they have 2 tables side by side, one employees, one contractors, or maybe they have 2 tabs of the same report, but they want to view the data separately. So rather than having to, what you could do is create a second query with the other filter, and then do a new tab or a new report element. The problem with that is what you're doing is running 2 queries when you could really be running 1 query, and then with both data sets, and then you just filter them separately in the report. So it's a matter of preference, and it kind of depends what you're doing. What's also helpful is sometimes if you don't have access to modify the universe, there may be filters you want to do in the query that you can't. For example, if I want to filter on some kind of variable, like let's say I want to take allocation hours divided by availability to get allocation percent, and then I want to filter the report for only where the allocation percent is not between 80 and 120. I could create a new measure. I could create something new in the universe for allocation percent, and then I could filter at this level. But if I can't do that, there'd be no way here to do it. What you could do is limit the data as much as you can to this point, and then in your report, you create allocation percent, and now I can filter an individual report tab based on allocation percent or any other variable you create. So that's another way you would use variables or filters, is when basically it's some kind of more complex filter that you can't do in the WEBI query. The trouble with this is if I turn off this filter pane and I'm just looking at this, there's no way I know that this stuff has been filtered. So if you're viewing someone else's report, trying to debug it, you have to be aware of, okay, turn on the filter, click on stuff and make sure there's no filter applied anywhere.
If you had that one thing where it was like, they give you the info and the query used and all that, the stats or whatever,
Yeah,
does it tell you if
there is. There's one here, report filter summary. So that's the one that helps you. If you throw this in there, it'll tell you each tab and any filters applied to the tabs or the tables, anything.
Sure.
It's all in there. Yeah, so that's what you can do as well. What some people like to do is take the same data set and create a bunch of tabs actually viewing their stuff in different ways. You know, we'll have some graphs and charts, then we'll dig into the details. You know, we might have the first tab some high level graphs, charts, then each tab digs into details in different groupings and ways. And then the last tab, what they might do is like report info, and they'll have like the query summary, the prompt summary, the filter summary. So if you export that to Excel and you ever need to go back or something and look at what's going on, you can. So the other thing you can do is just name stuff. Like what I would do here is add a couple text boxes above, or do something here so that people know, hey, this is not everything. Like rename this tab to 2013. So it's apparent what's going on. Okay, any questions on filtering in the report here? Okay, this is called like static report filtering. Everything we've done so far, it filters it when you're editing the report. The end user is stuck with whatever you filtered. So they can't change, right? They could refresh data, but if you do a query filter or a report filter, right, it's applied here, and when they're viewing the report, they can't change that. There's also some dynamic filters that you could set up so that they could actually change how it's filtered on the fly. So to do that, there's two ways to do it. There's a simple and a one, which is just show hide report filter toolbar. And you'll see this in the top right. With that one, you can drag in any fields from your query. Let's do monthly start date. Let's do year. Okay. So if I drag up year in here, I can change quickly between all the years. All right, and this is a dynamic filter. This will, when a viewer uses the report, they will see this and they'll be able to change it. Okay, that's supposed to be the simple method. Every one is just a drop down of all the available values. Okay, the more detailed are called input controls. And this is where you can control, you set up a dynamic filter, and you can have lots of options on how they can filter, how that displays. So first I define what I want to filter on. So in this case, I'll do year again. And then I can choose a slider, entry field, a box, radio buttons, a spinner. I don't know what the spinner is. Or for multiple values, there's double sliders and stuff. I'll do a simple slider.
What's a spinner?
I don't know what a spinner is.
It's good to add it now.
Looks fun.
It's just like one of those.
Yeah.
It just tick box. You just go up, down. Oh, okay. All right. And then you can change the label. I'll call this, I'll just do year. You can provide minimum and maximum values that you allow, as well as the increment, and then a default value. So what I could do is default this to 2013, and then the operator, not only can you do equal to, you could do something like greater than and less than. So what I could do is have two sliders. I could say start date, end date, or end year, and I could allow them to slide, and instead of doing equal to, it would be greater than and then less than, so they could kind of slide these two things. I'm just going to do a simple equal to.
Should everybody be able to see things like sliders? I just get some of that.
And you don't see anything inside it?
I have single values, entry field combo, radio, list, and calendar.
That must be a date field you're doing then. Yeah, so depending on what type of field, like a date field has a calendar option. So here it's saying I have to have I'll do 2013 to 2016. Okay.
I see it.
And then here, you can actually select which report elements to assign them to. Whether you want the entire report, or you can actually have input controls controlling just individual report elements. So you could have different input controls controlling different things. We could do, here's a date, so you could pick a calendar. I don't know if you want to see a bunch, I mean, there's tons available. So here's a number field, sliders and spinners and entry fields. So there's a ton you can do with the input controls. This stuff is only useful if people are actually viewing the reports in WEBI, or if they're running them from Clarity, and then when they pop up, they're going to view the report there. A lot of people, for a report, they just want to get static. They want to get it to Excel, PDF, print it.
Yeah.
So in that case, none of this stuff is going to help them. But if you have people in WEBI, or you have people that want to do some kind of dashboarding stuff, you can use input controls to do a lot of that. They could actually analyze, give them a big set of data, and they can slice and dice it themselves. And you can even
question. Why isn't it up in the top thing? You know how you can drive the other ones up there? Why is this one? Like
yeah, input controls are always on the left.
Are they any different from that filter there?
Yeah, this one they call a simple filter because there's only, everything is a drop down no matter what.
So that only purpose of the other one is just to get the free calendar.
Yeah, to do lots of different filter options, because you can do a set of, like if I did radio buttons, you know, it would do a radio button for each year, and you could just click each one. You can also do something like, I'll do a quick example.
And are these required filters? Like if they don't pick, like is there always gonna be an all option if they don't pick one?
Yeah, you can have default values or just have it do all. Yeah. So
I was trying to make one slider where I can pick. Nobody does hours less than.
Oh, sorry, you just sent it to me.
I only see equals to
I thought you said that you don't set it to it.
In other words, if I want to, right now, it's equal to, then I have to put it exactly the number of actions in order to see the value.
yeah.
Say anybody could add.
Yeah, if it's not showing up, then it must not be one of the available options for that particular one.
It depends on the attribute, right? Which attribute you select and what type you choose.
Yeah. Yep.
If you select a monthly, right, you get options.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Other thing you could do is look at year.
I'm going to do the
At available hours per year. So this would be like your overall capacity, let's say, of your company, or you know, if you filtered for one OBS. And then here you have some details about that: the resource, the year, and the available hours. What you can do on any element, you can right-click and say Define as Input Control. And I haven't done this a ton, so there's some options I'm not quite sure. But what you can do is equal to, okay. I can select the report elements to assign them to the input control. So the result, that table down there, I'm gonna say I want to filter that. And if I did it right, what it should let me do is click on a tab like 2013, and now that table gets filtered for only 2013. Yeah.
How did you do that?
So just like we did input controls here on the left, I can define any report element as an input control. And what that will do is allow you to click on values, and you can have that actually filter other elements in your report. Yeah, so I click each tab, and as I do it, it's refiltering this table below. You just right-click and say define as input control. Yep, and again, that's only if they're, if you dump to Excel or PDF, all that's gone. But, with the input controls on the left or defining stuff as input controls, you could actually make these very, very interactive. Almost a nice dashboarding tool. So if you do something like this, it could be an alternative to Excelsius. Let me find the notes. Okay.
How often do you wind up using some of this advanced stuff? Do most of the clients just using the standard reports, or do you find yourself?
The formulas and functions all the time, even in a basic class, always people are coming up to me, I want to do this, I want to do that, and have to use formulas and functions all the time, as well as in-report filters.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of demand for these input controls and these interactive, because most people, they want to dump stuff to Excel or PDF. And so there's not as much of a demand. I think, what I would love to do is create some highly, highly interactive ones for Exchange or something. Because I think if people could see how interactive this stuff is, they would say, whoa, and I don't need a Clarity license to do that. Let's give our executives, let's create a bunch of interactive dashboards and have our business users go in there and slice and dice the data, and they never have to have a Clarity license.
That's exactly how the conversation would go. Wow, let's do it all right now.
So this is some of the advanced stuff that.
None of us have power, but we're gonna try.
Yeah, so this is kind of the very powerful WEBI stuff that I think a lot of people don't know you can do. Yeah. Yeah, it's like one of those things. It's like I never have time for, but if I did, I would build out a few dashboards like that and demo them and just say, hey, this is WEBI. This is, totally interactive. You don't need a Clarity license to get in there. So that's the kind of stuff. If I had more time, I would love to kind of investigate some of that really really cool stuff it can do. So yeah. And what you'll now see is this measure in this column. It's actually, even though this is at the project level, it's actually going in, and on each task, it's checking if these hours come from a key task or not, and if so, it's including this in the sum. If not, it doesn't. And then here it's just doing the opposite. So you could do this. So here you could put key, not key. This obviously isn't something that I don't see any use for this. But you could do something like, again, like employees, contractors. You could have one column that says, employee, one that says contractor, and look at their hours. So if you think about it as just another level of the in-report filters, it's down. This time it's down to the actual individual field you can apply a filter to. Okay, so that's what the where clause in here does. If I remove these,
it's interesting. It's almost like you have to unlearn a lot of stuff you learn in SQL.
Yeah, because it's different. Yeah. Okay, another thing I'll show you. So that's not too hard. The other one has to do with the calculation context we talked about before. What you see is, all right, here's at the project level, I can see the hours. We showed before how you add task, and now I'm seeing it drilled in And now these hours are drilled all the way down to the resource level. Okay. So the issue is, let's say I insert a column to the right. And let's say in this column, I want to display the total hours for this table. So if I insert a sum, I get the total at the bottom. Okay. And this says equals sum of labor actual hours. I say, okay, great. Let me just copy this and I'll put it here. And it didn't do what I wanted because on each line, the context of how it's calculating this is each individual project. This is in the footer of the table. In the table footer, the project is actually taken out of the context, and this is sum up of the entire report or the entire table, however you want to think of it. So even though this text is the formula is exactly the same, it's still not giving me the total for the whole thing. In order to do that, there's a few different ways that you can manually specify the calculation context. It's called, there's for each, for all, and in. Those are your three options. If I add to this formula for all project name, I now get the correct value. So what this is doing is for all removes something, a dimension from the context. If I add in resource name, what you find, this is still working, this is no longer working, but it doesn't match this because I'm looking at for all projects. So if you notice anything,
If you were to add a Sheldon.
Anything with the same resource, see Sheldon Cooper 311, Sheldon Cooper 311. So I've removed the project name from the context, but I haven't removed the resource name. So what I can do is in here, I do semicolon resource name. Now it works. So in each one, I'm going to have to remove, depending on what else is in the context. And the same would apply if we had sections above this. Whatever section it's in is also part of the context, so I need to remove that from the context if I want to.
So it's a pain like going into someone's report that they've already done and trying to figure out where they filtered and why they filtered.
Yeah. This stuff is not used as often, but I do find it, every so often something that they want to do can't be done. Like this, for example, if they want on the same line to display the sum, this is the only way to do it. There's no other way.
No, that's not too usual use case, but maybe a good usual use case would be percentages. Is this how you have to do percentages?
That's how you could do percentages. There is the quick method. So we saw this percentage thing, and that does percentage. It uses some built-in percentage function to do it. But without that, yeah, the other way to do it is I have this value, and what I'll do is I'll say equals labor actual hours divided by, and then the other stuff I had in here already. And now I'm getting, I have to change the format to percentage, but now I'm getting a percent of the total. So that's how you could calculate a percentage here as well. In explicitly specifies the context. So within, it doesn't matter what is in the context or is not in the context. I can specify exactly what the context is. I wonder if it'll let me do. No, you have to do something here. So what I could do is labor actual hours in, and let's do project name. It's going to do, you see, for the same project, it's the same number. Okay. So what I'm specifying is I want the sum of the labor actual hours in the project name. So this dimension. Without that, you see what I'm getting is the sum for the project and resource. Here, I'm getting it just for the project. So if I change this to in project name, semicolon, resource name, it matches this exactly. So all I've done is duplicate the context that already exists. The context of this is project name and resource name, which are the two dimensions here. And again, if I had sections, those would be part of the context as well.
Is there a way to use the keyword in to say all?
Not that I know of, to just remove all. There may be. I haven't done it, but there may be a way to say in all. You know, we could try that in maybe all. In all.
Google it.
Yeah, there might be. You could Google it and see if there's a quick way to do that. The last one is for each. For each, add something to the context that is not there. So this is a little trickier to understand because it's harder to find use cases for this. So if I say for each task name, this will actually give me an error, multiple value error, should. Actually, no, let me switch task name here. And I'll say for each resource name. Maybe it won't let me do. Sometimes it depends where you put these things. I can't break it. It adds something to the context that isn't there, and the use for this is if you need to. Where I ran into tons of this was at the Federal Reserve, because they end up. You know how you have these cost fields in here? Well, in the rate matrix, you have 3 different rates. Well, the cost field, I can't remember even which one it bases that off of. The out-of-the-box universe only uses basically one of those rates. Most clients, it's fine because that they fill out it's the same rate in all 3 columns. Well, the Federal Reserve, different departments use different ones of those columns. And whatever one the out-of-the-box universe is used, it wasn't the correct one. So for them to calculate cost, they have to manually do it. So what that means is they have to take each resource, project, resource class, however the rate matrix is defined, look at it that detailed level, match it up with the rate matrix information, get the rate, make the calculation, and then sum that up at a higher level. So what happens is sometimes if you're doing some complex calculations like math stuff, sometimes the calculation needs to happen at a detailed level, and then it needs to be summed up. So you think about if you had, let's just say you had something like, so let's say this was their rate, all right, and let's replace, we've got a resource, here are their hours, and this is the rate they're at. So what I'd want to do in this view, this is equal to, or I'll put it up here actually. This is equal to the actual hours times, 100 or whatever the field was that gave them the rate. Okay, that's fine. Well, the problem would be then if I don't want to view it at the resource level, I want to view this at the overall project level. Okay, well, the problem is at this level, the rates are actually based on resource, let's say not on project. And so I actually need to get detailed information about each resource and their rate, make the calculation, and then sum that up at the project level. And so the formulas to do something like that, the formulas get pretty complicated. To be able to, you would say the sum of,
Stuff like that, you would do that in the university.
Yeah, if possible, what you would do is add some stuff to the universe to be able to get around doing something like that. So it just, if you can't add it, or if it's a one-off, one person wants to do something special and no one else needs it, you could do something like this. So, it ends up being something like equals labor actual hours. So you'd be something like sum of labor. You look at labor actual hours for each resource times, whatever the field is for the rate. I'm just going to put in 100. In this case, it doesn't matter, but essentially that's what you do. It's a way that you add stuff to the context. The problem is if I'm adding things to the context, you can't really display it. What you usually get when that happens, if you try to add things to the context, is this multiple value error. You can't display multiple values. So the only really use for each is when you're making calculations at a more detailed level, like this. I'm digging into the individual resource, making some calculation, and then I'm summing that all up at this higher level. So, I apologize for not having a really great example of this because, like I said, I've only had a few cases where people needed this. The for all and the in are more common. So I just want to let you know it's out there. So if you run into cases where they're making calculations that aren't adding up, or they want to do some kind of percentage or something like that, where the natural calculation context that's built in is not doing what they want it to do. Yep. So that's those are. The Federal Reserve was like the craziest one we ever had. I mean, to calculate costs, I'd have formulas that, would take up like an entire page in a notebook, because they have absolutely no control over their universe. It's centrally managed at a different bank. And so there's no way to even make any changes. So we had to do all these crazy formulas. But for the most part, that kind of stuff you hopefully don't have to do. Okay, we already looked at advanced query stuff. The last piece would be running it from Clarity. Actually, let me do one more. Tracking changes. Okay. So this is option here to track. What tracking changes does is if you schedule report instances, right? So you have like a history. What you can do is you can track changes from one instance to the next. So you can base it on either, you can pick one instance that you ran and make that the baseline or whatever that you're comparing to, or you can have it set. That's what this is. Use this. You can pick one to be the reference data, or you can auto update the reference data with each refresh. So it always does the previous. And once you set that, with this tracking stuff, you can set, there's a bunch of settings you can pick on how it says, yep, if things are added or data changes. And it's a way that you could schedule a report to run every week or month, track changes either between or at a reference point. And it's a way you can essentially end up getting a baseline without using Clarity baselines. So I've suggested this to people in cases where their organization tells them not to baseline. They don't allow baselining because they want to deploy to everybody at some point down the line, and they don't want people doing it. And so this would be an alternative where they could essentially run it once at the start, make that their reference data, and have it scheduled to run, and they always compare back to the original. So I don't see a ton of people doing the tracking changes, but it is available if you want to do something like that. Okay, the last thing was connecting it to Clarity.
The real reason we do this all.
Yeah. So if you want to connect this to Clarity, two things. Well, how many of you have ever hooked up Crystal reports to Clarity? So, maybe half of you. So it's a very similar process. So the first thing is the name of the report, whatever you name it, and whatever folder you put it in. You're going to need to know that, and that's how you connect to the report. And then parameters. So anything I put in here, if I have a prompt, this is the text that I would need to know for when I add this to Clarity. So I can put this as task ID, something like that. And then where you'll want to save it, if I try to get out of here.
CSV folder?
You want to save it in CA reports / CA Clarity, and then anything below that. You can put it right in that directory or in any subfolder. So a lot of people create a custom folder in there so they distinguish it from the out-of-the-box reports. But everything in Clarity, when you reference it in relation to that CA Clarity / CA reports folder. So that's the start point. And then from there, you would reference if there's a subfolder, you put that in the name. On the Clarity side, what that means